All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Week in Review podcast. Sorry, I'm dealing with technical difficulties. Actually, not technical difficulties, but like physical difficulties. I broke my mic stand. And so I have a new one coming today. However, in the meantime, my mic can do this. Watch. Oh, wait. Oh, look, I fixed it. Of course I fixed it now. All right, there we go. I guess we fixed it. But it decided to roll over on me in the mid show, so it'll probably do that again once or twice here, but we shall see. How's everybody doing today, man? Welcome to the Week in Review podcast. I do this every Saturday that I can. I was actually supposed to be at an event today, but then we've got some inspectors coming for our roof, so I had to cancel that, which opened this up. I was going to record it last night, and here we are. So it ends up working out. So there we go. All right. Just a human glitch, Brian. Yeah. Human glitch. No, it's technical glitch, human error. Those are the talking points that they like to have for us. Yeah. Miss Watley forgot about the Week in Review. Oh, I'm so forgettable. All right, guys, we got a lot to talk about today. Of course, there's going to be a lot of Iran coverage. You're going to get, probably beat up over this coverage because it's all anybody really wants to talk about. But I did find some other news outside of that, of course, from last week. And there's some new stuff, and we'll get into all of it. The cool thing about this show is, so like when I prep this show, every week, every day of the week, when I'm done with my morning show on Badlands Daily, check them out. I bookmark the tabs that I have open. Okay. And I put them under, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. The coolest part about doing this show is you'll see something that we talked about on Monday and then something else on Thursday or Friday or even Wednesday. And then you get to put it all together into a segment and kind of unpack it as a consolidated thing. And to me, there's a lot of benefit to that as well, and just going through the daily news. And so try and go a little more surface level, a little more than surface level here on this show. All right. So I do want to remind you guys, I'm not going to beat you guys to death with ads and sponsors and all that. But if you do want to support me and support this show, I have a link of all my sponsors down below, mypillow.com, promo code CanCon, save up to 60% or more. Depends on the sale that's running at the time, but use promo code CanCon there at mypillow.com. I also have a soft disclosure promo code affiliate. So if you guys want to check that out, softdisclosure.com, promo code CanCon as well. And fantastic products over there at Soft Disclosure. Absolutely love the beard oil. It's like a new thing for me, and the beard brush. I tell you what, I use this thing. I've used it on shows before because I can see myself sometimes, and I'll just right in the middle of the show, just give it a nice little once over there. So softdisclosure.com, promo code CanCon, mypillow.com, promo code CanCon. And we'll talk a little bit about gold and silver later on in the show. Smash that thumbs up if you have not done so already. Helps me out. And let's jump into the first story. We talked about this one last week as well I think it was on Wednesday, I believe. This is sad. Never anything you want to see. President Trump truthing out that Susie Wiles, an incredible chief of staff, a great person, one of the strongest people I know, but unfortunately she has been diagnosed with early stage breast cancer and has decided to take on this challenge immediately as opposed to waiting. And always a good thing. Take it on immediately. She has a fantastic medical team and her prognosis is excellent. During the treatment period, she'll be spending virtually full time at the White House, which makes me as president very happy. Her strength and her commitment to continuing to do the job she loves and do so well while undergoing treatment tells you everything you need to know about her. Susie, as one of my closest and most important advisors, is tough and deeply committed to serving the American people. She will soon be better than ever. Melania and I are with her in every way, and we look forward to working with Susie on many big and wonderful things that are happening for the benefit of our country, President Donald J. Trump. I mean, that's never something you ever want to see, right? I told the story this week on Daily that while I was in boot camp my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I mean, to the point where when I had gotten, so she had gotten diagnosed like almost right away when I went. So, and Marine boot camp's 3 months. And by the time she had gotten to my graduation, it was already like the surgeries were all done and everything else. So it moves quickly, but so does the treatment. Um, the one thing, and I said this during the week, is that I knew something was up right away. Like going back and reading, letters and stuff that she'd written me, I knew right away that something was going on. And they call it chemo brain. Now, I don't know what treatments Susie Wiles is going to be going through, and wish her the best in going through those, and hope, with the early catch, that she's able to beat this. But I also know in reality that if she is going through chemotherapy, how much of an impact that can have on your cognitive function. And I know maybe it's not the most politically correct thing to say, or the most sensitive thing. It's insensitive, but we are talking about our country, and we are talking about the person that has maybe potentially, like, if you've ever watched, Scandal, I think was the show, 8 seasons or 7 seasons, the chief of staff is almost as much of a factor in the White House as the president. Maybe even more so, because they're a gatekeeper. The chief of staff manages all of the cabinet secretaries. It's their boss, ultimately. I mean, the president is the ultimate boss, but the chief of staff has a ton of authority over all of the cabinet, including the vice president. And they're able to determine what does and does not make it into the Oval Office. And, to have somebody that's not, straight, clear-minded, maybe it's best, I don't know. It's not something, my personal experiences with that were not good. I'm grateful my mom's still here, 17 years. I think 17 years removed now, cancer-free. But, I will never forget the 3 or 4 or 5 years after she had the chemo where, she would just have mind blanks. So, all right. So wishing her the absolute best. Again, the pink ribbon means a lot in this household. So, all right, let's jump into this story. Antifa cell members convicted in Prairie Land ICE Detention Center shooting. Let me get my highlights back up here. I don't know why. It took them away completely. Oh, okay. Well, so this story here, you had 9 Antifa members. This was back when they shot at police officers during a riot. And there was a lot of things that came out of this trial right here from the DOJ. They've been convicted. A lot of interesting things came out. And first, the biggest thing from this is we finally got a court case, a court precedent to declare Antifa as a terrorist cell. And there was, so it says here that Antifa cell operatives were providing material support for terrorist obstruction and attempted murder of an Alvarado police officer, police officer, an unarmed correctional officer. So this is the first time, and I don't know why my highlights disappeared on me, but that's interesting. I usually jump down through. So when you're reading these DOJ press releases, just a little insider baseball, you get the highlight of the story in the first paragraph or two, right? And then you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cases of bureaucrats patting themselves on the back. Like, this is a great accomplishment for the, and you have to weed through all that before you get down to the substance of what took place. And I'll just read through it real quick. Testimony and other evidence at trial established that the defendants were members of a North Texas Antifa cell, part of a larger militant enterprise made up of networks of individual and small groups, primarily ascribing to an ideology of explicit calls for the overthrow of the U.S. government, law enforcement authorities, and system of law. An expert testifying in the government's case told the jury that Antifa's coordinated efforts involve obstructing federal law through organized riots, violent assaults, and armed confrontations with law enforcement. Evidence at trial revealed the Antifa cell involved in the Prairie Land attack looked at Benjamin Song as a leader. Song acquired firearms that he distributed to co-defendants and recruited members at gun ranges and combat sessions that he conducted, as well as from various ideologically aligned groups. For example, defendant Inez Soto, Elizabeth Soto, Savannah Batten were part of a group that created and distributed insurrectionary materials called Zines. It goes on to talk about how orchestrated this was. I mean, these were people that were out there during the day at these protests in plain clothes, normal looking people, although the term normal, when you're referring to Antifa, normal is never a very good descriptor of Antifa people, but it is what it is. But they were out there in plain clothes. Then as the sun sets and the night arises, they don their black bloc gear, the shin guards, the face masks, the gas masks, the black clothing, the batons, the umbrellas, all the stuff that we have grown accustomed to them having, except in this case, the Antifa cell, and I'm reading again, the Antifa cell acquired over 50 firearms from the Fort Worth, Dallas area prior to July 4th. During trial, the government introduced numerous chats of the members who used an encrypted messaging app with others to auto-delete function. With the auto-delete function, they also used monikers in group chats to hide their identities. Let me get into the meat and potatoes of what they did. Witnesses testified during the government's case included the Alvarado police officer who was shot in the neck by Song, detention officers present that night who also took over from cover from rapid fire. Okay, that's pretty much it. But this was an orchestrated event, clearly an orchestrated event. They had the plans in place. They executed the plans. They acquired weaponry, and they opened fire on law enforcement. And they are now going to be doing a minimum of 20 years for Song with a maximum of life. And the others, it looks like they're facing up to 40 years in prison. So again, the big takeaway from this is it's one of the first times that we actually got Antifa in a court of law recognized as a terrorist organization. And that has been one of the goals from the Trump administration to get that designation. I'm kind of torn on that though, because I'm flashing back to the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and the militias, which are constitutionally sound organizations. If Antifa called itself a militia, I would probably support it. Not support Antifa, but support the idea of having militias, because I do think they are imperative to our republic. Right. It's the foundation of what our republic, the Sons of Liberty, right? The Sons of Liberty were not, what we think, these guys walking through the streets all proud and in uniform. No, they were guerrilla warfare specialists. They were going out and they were conducting these guerrilla clandestine operations against the Brits. And, so that is fundamental to our history as Americans. Now, what Antifa's doing is crazy, but I'm not going to disavow militias. All right, let's get into the SAVE Act. Speaking of a feckless government that does nothing for us. I played this one. This is Senator Kennedy this week talking about introducing the SAVE Act as a reconciliation bill.
Serious about passing. And I think we are, Mr. President. I know you are. We need to try to pass this legislation through reconciliation. Now, you know how reconciliation works, Mr. President. It means we can pass this bill with 50 Republican votes and the vice president to break the tie. That's how we pass the one big, beautiful bill. I would hope to get some of my Democratic friends to support us, but we don't have to have them. That's harder than I described because, as you know, Mr. President, there are parameters on reconciliation. Anything you propose through reconciliation has to be paid for. We can find the money to pay for it. And anything you pass through reconciliation has to conform with the contours of the Budget Control Act. We call that giving a provision a bird bath. And our parliamentarian decides what passes muster under the Budget Control Act and what doesn't.
All right, so you've got Senator Kennedy coming out and trying to figure out ways to kind of worm this into law, the Save America Act. And again, unfortunately, I still believe that this is going to be dead on arrival, that it won't get passed. I don't think they've had the vote yet. They're still going through their long cloture votes. We got an amendment that was introduced by Murkowski that we'll get to here in a second. But so the reason I play that is because Kennedy is thinking outside the box. Meanwhile, some of the strongest proponents that we've had for the Save America Act are trying to put us back in the box, I think, to an extent. This is Una Panuna Banca, Anna Paulina Luna, talking about attaching it to FISA.
So next week, the Senate is going to be doing something called a show vote, meaning they are putting the Save America Act on the floor of the Senate, but they know it's not going to pass because they're not using the talking filibuster, which is how they would get it over the finish line. So instead of applauding them for their failures and mediocrity, the other strategy is to actually attach the Save America Act to FISA, which is a must-pass piece of legislation. Now, there's also been a group of us, a blockade that's formed that will no circumstance allow any piece of legislation that the Senate sends down to pass because they're not doing their jobs on behalf of the American people. Meanwhile, the Senate literally just lectured us, oh, we don't have time to, use up our floor time on voter ID, literally one of the most important things in the country. Yet they're doing dog parades. They're going on taxpayer-funded congressional delegations. They're doing anything but their job. So that's a good pressure point. But really how we're going to get this done is attaching it to FISA. So please, please, please make your voices known to your elected representatives.
Attach it to FISA. Attach it to FISA. We must pass FISA. That's where we're at as a nation, guys. Let me play this one. This because this was her follow-up. This was her follow-up later in the week. And she says something here that is so unbelievably true.
Look, there's a number of
let me get the volume up for you guys.
Look, there's a number of Republicans in the House that will refuse to vote on any rule that has Senate legislation, meaning no Senate legislation will pass unless the Save America Act is something that the Senate will vote on. But look, Maria, as you are seeing now, you are seeing some of the more moderate Democrats getting squishy on this issue. And what I will say is that we actually, if we stick this on FISA, let's say that everything goes to hell in a handbasket in the Senate and we can't get anything done with the standing filibuster, then we can stick it on FISA. As you know, Maria, FISA is one of these must-pass pieces of legislation that the Senate would literally walk over broken glass in order to pass. And I believe this is how we're going to actually get it done. But it is.
The Senate will walk through broken glass to get it done. I mean, she's not lying. She's not lying. The Senate will walk through glass to continue to fund an agency that spies on American citizens, has been completely and totally weaponized against American citizens, violating their Fourth Amendment rights egregiously. I don't say that lightly because I don't know that we have a decision from the courts on that. But I will say the Fourth Amendment, you cannot get a warrantless search on American citizens. Now, they can't go to a FISA court and say, I want to spy on Brian Lupo. They can't do that. They can't go and say, I want to spy on, U.S. citizen Joe Schmo. But they can turn around and finagle their way through a foreign entity that they already have a tap on. And it's not very difficult to make that surveillance happen. Now, again, you're thinking, well, I mean, you would have to engage with them. Yeah, I'm not a criminal. I'm not doing anything illegal, although we all commit 3 felonies a day. The book, 3 felonies a day. But I'm not talking to foreign entities. This is what they're trying to get Tucker with, it seems like. Dan Crenshaw alluded to this on X this week, that Tucker Carlson, the CIA, was able to spy on Tucker Carlson because he was talking to somebody overseas that had a FISA, tap against them. And because Carlson was talking to them, he gets kind of wrapped up secondarily into that FISA warrant. And look, I mean, who knows what he's talking about? You know, like what Tucker is talking about with, you know, Qataris or whoever it was that they had a FISA tap on. But it better have been really, really bad. And even then, I still think that even if you're talking to somebody, especially as a journalist, now, granted, we all think that I'm not going to say we all, but a lot of us think that there is some sort of intelligence apparatus that is that Carlson is involved, that Tucker is involved in. We believe that. I mean, he's talked about his dad being CIA, him wanting to be CIA, or his dad wasn't CIA, but he worked for all the USAID networks, and you know, saying that he wanted to be CIA when he was growing up. Well, a lot of times it's better for the CIA not to have you as a on the books analyst or investigator, whatever it may be, and instead have you off the books, but doing things in the media and whatnot. So, you know, while he says a lot of the right things, where does he really stand? But so if he's negotiating as a journalist, you know, come on my show, we want to talk to you, whatever the case might be, then that's a little bit of an issue with me. And yeah, so attach it to FISA. They'll walk through broken glass to pass FISA, but they won't pass a common sense voter reform bill that has astronomical U.S. approval. The only thing that has more approval than the Save America Act is Donald Trump's support among MAGA, according to Harry Enton. We'll get to that a little bit later on. So meanwhile, this was a story that not a lot of people caught on to, and I did not. I was shocked by this story. The U.S. House tanks balanced budget amendment as national debt tops $39 trillion. The U.S. government was adding $89,000 per second to the national debt last year, and so it went up roughly $3 trillion in the last year. Now, a lot of that is attached to the Inflation Reduction Act, the Green New Scam, and a lot of that stuff, and they're trying to, you know, pull back a lot of that money. But yeah, our spending's out of control. So Congress, Andy Biggs specifically, passes a resolution, or proposes a resolution. It says the resolution proposed a constitutional amendment that would cap federal spending each year at the average annual revenue of the previous 3 years. And it reads, the resolution reads, quote, total expenditures for a year shall not exceed the average annual receipts collected in the past 3 prior years, adjusted in proportion to the changes in the population of citizens of the United States and inflation. In other words, as more people come in and more people pay taxes and inflation goes up, the budget will go up accordingly. But it still must be consistent with the average of the 3 prior years. So even if you have a down year, right, or if you have a bumper year, you're accounting for that in this amendment. Now, a lot of things that I didn't like in this resolution proposal, that, you know, it's better than nothing, but it's still like WTF. Debt payments are excluded from the list of the definition of expenditures, and the amendment would not apply during wartime. So I get the wartime. I'm okay with that, although it seems like we're in a perpetual state of war, minus maybe the last 10 years. Well, we weren't technically at war during the Trump or Biden administrations, but we were definitely fighting proxy wars during the Biden administration, whether it's Ukraine, Russia, Gaza, Israel, Palestine, Israel. We definitely were fighting proxy wars. Would you suspend it during proxy wars like that? Like, we need to increase the budget because they're at war, so therefore we're at war? That kind of logic? I hope not. But taking away debt payments from expenditures, that's our biggest expenditure that we have, is our interest rate, the interest that we pay on our debt. So to think that, well, okay, so maybe it's not. Let me backtrack on this, because it says debt payments are excluded from the definition. So would that include the interest? That's something I'd be curious. I would assume that debt payments include the interest. So I'm going to go with yes at this point. Lawmakers could override the Constitution if it were to pass. Could override the amendment with a 2/3 vote of both chambers. Again, that's fucking crazy. No way. No way. If it passes as an amendment, then you can't choose when to and when not to abide by the Constitution. Although we see it on the daily. I know people are like, oh, they do it all the time. Yes, they do. And we need to hold them accountable to that. I don't know. You're not going to get an argument from me on that. I'm just, I'm speaking broadly here. Let's see. Is there anything else key here? Yeah. So the other big takeaway from this is that the U.S. lawmakers have introduced balanced budget proposals hundreds of times over the past 50 years and over 100 times since 1999 alone. Only twice in American history has any balanced budget proposal passed either chamber. The Senate in 1982, before my lifetime by 1 year, and the House in 1995. So again, when you look at the three bills that we're talking about here, Save America Act, going from extreme to not. Balanced budget proposal, Save America Act, FISA. Balanced budget proposal we didn't even hear about. Why? Because it's something that probably would have been more popular than the Save America Act. Well, what do you mean? We need to clear voting. Voting's everything. Yes, but voting is still partisan. And there's still people that bought into the garbage that it's racist to have voter ID, or that, married women won't be able to vote because they have a different last name. There's people that bought into that bullshit. And those people are the 17% Keck that aren't in line with the Save America Act. They're pushing against it. And they're doing so because you've got 50 or 49 senators in the Democrat Party that are rallying behind the Chuck Schumer nonsense, that somehow this is Jim Crow 2.0. They're rallying behind that. So that's why you have the little disparity there. However, I would love to see Congress try and explain to the American people, well, we need to be able to spend more than we make. Anybody with half a brain looks at that and they're like, wait, I can't do that. My business can't do that. My employer can't do that. Otherwise, my employer would just pay us all ridiculous salaries and just keep pulling money from the money tree. Nobody would. I think that a budget proposal like that, if it got a legitimate plug in the media, which the media is fake and gay, the media is one of the worst things that's ever happened to this country. They're so off track from what they are supposed to be. A controlled entity, completely controlled entity, and a controlling entity. If the media covered a budget proposal fairly, it would have 90+% support, in my opinion. And I don't know who the hell it should have 100% support. Then you move on to the Save America Act. We talked about that. Then you move on to FISA, and they're like, they'll walk over broken glass to spy on you. They'll walk over broken glass to spy on you guys. Senator Lisa Murkowski put a proposal forward, and let's just jump into this. We're not going to play the clip because it's just 5 minutes of her just filibustering, basically. But one of the amendments that she submitted says that, quote, this subsection and any other provision of this act relating to the requirement to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship shall not apply with respect to an individual born before December 31st, 1960. Okay? Now, Murkowski is arguing, well, they're old and they don't have birth certificates and they don't have means to prove that they're citizens and all this other crap. Okay. But that's not why I think she's doing this. 1960 to where we're at now is what, 66 years, just past the age of retirement. I believe that they don't want any of these people proving their citizenship in that age bracket, because in order to donate to a political campaign, I believe you're supposed to be a U.S. citizen. Like, we don't have, you can't donate to a political, you're not supposed to be able to donate to a political campaign if you are foreign born. Let me fact check myself on this real quick. Let me fact check myself. Can you donate to a political campaign as an individual if you are not a U.S. citizen? You might be able to. I don't know. No, under U.S. federal law, a non-U.S. citizen who is not a lawful permanent resident generally cannot donate to a political campaign, even as an individual. So, do you guys see where I'm going with this now? This, I think. What are we looking at here? I see Brian knows. What do I know? Oh, Murph saying if elections don't get fixed. You are preaching to the choir, guys. Murph, and I know Murph knows that. Murph knows that I have to look at things. I mean, if I wish I could just sit here and rail about how badly we need to fix our elections. I do it every Friday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and Asawavan all shows are why we vote now. So yeah, I am definitely on top of that. But getting back to my point here, I think it's the Act Blue. I think this is because Murkowski is a beneficiary, of the smurfing. And I don't imagine it's through Act Blue with her. I would imagine it's through Win Red, although it might as well be through Act Blue. But if they go through and if these people that are, donating and voting at that age have to prove citizenship, how many of the people on the voter rolls disappear? And, like they're no longer on there. And would it complicate things for them to make political donations, campaign donations as an individual if they're not allowed to do it as non-U.S. citizens? It also shines light on how many of our, senior citizens are actually legitimate people. Go back to Elon Musk and the Social Security Administration's expose that there's over 400 million people in the Social Security database. I think Grok fact-checked me last week on this and said that it's over 500 million now. So again, how do we have a database that is used to verify whether or not you're alive and eligible to vote? How do we have 500 plus million people in that database? And then you look at the Act Blue and smurfing, and almost all of the Act Blue Win Red smurfing, I think it is all. In fact, I don't think it's almost all. I think all of it is retired senior citizens, people over the age of 65, 70 that are doing the smurfing. And this is laundering millions and millions of dollars, not just to political candidates, but to NGOs. And not all, but I think it's all, right? I think it's all is coming from our taxpayer dollars. I would highly recommend you go to Badlands Media, look up Why We Vote, and look up the interviews that Ash and I have done with Peter Berniger over the years. This is a story I've written about extensively on Gateway. And I strongly believe that Murkowski is trying to make an amendment. Not that the bill is going to pass, that the Save America Act is going to pass, but I do believe that this is an effort to, to get this thing cleaned up so that they don't expose their money pit. All right, let's should we hit a sponsor real quick? I think we probably should. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about a sponsor here. And we will talk about... No, you know what? Let's not. Let's keep moving. Oh, no. I think I just closed out my whole tab. I did. I just closed out my computer. So the only bad thing about doing this is my computer gets really funky when I'm doing this show, because I have like 100 tabs open. Oh man. Bear with me, guys. Bear with me. Oh no. Did I really just do this? I did. Got it back. I was like, this would be a short show if I closed out. it's so laggy, and I accidentally did that. I gotta clean up my computer. I got so many videos and clips and everything else on here from shows and shorts and everything else. All right, so Nick Shirley back at it, exposing the fraud in California this time, which is badass because I think a lot of us, had a feeling. I think a lot of us had a feeling that that's where it was going to go. Right, it was going to go from Minneapolis to California. California's I did admittedly, I did think there was going to be I thought there was going to be like a jump over, like there was going to be one place. Whoa, where'd that go? There was going to be a state in between, and I thought it was going to be a red state, perhaps Ohio, maybe Florida, but no, we went straight from Minnesota to California. Might not have been the best for the kind of you're only going after blue states retards, but it is what it is. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into this.
Sound of hospice money. Could you just answer the question, what's the need for 1,000% increase in hospice care here inside of LA? Do you have the paperwork to enroll a little boy by the name of Joey?
You don't know what's going on?
Well, it says there's 14 children enrolled here on the state of California. That there is $6,000 per beneficiary. Can you give us any explanation? Where can we open a hospice at? He's a Maybach just like you.
California may have the largest amount of fraud in the country, as California is the state with the highest taxes and collects more money than any other state in America. It is filled with fraud. California's version of Medicaid, called Medi-Cal, has more than doubled since 2022 from $108 billion to a proposed $222 billion in 2026. Their population, however, has not grown exponentially. However, their spending has. There has been 1,000% increase in hospice care in the Los Angeles County. In fact, 1 out of every $10 of home health care in America is spent in Los Angeles. On top of that, their government-funded daycare programs are filled with violations. While they continue to give money to these fraudsters, it is estimated that the fraud in California could be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. In this video, we'll be going face-to-face with these fraudsters, confronting them as they defraud the American taxpayer out of millions and billions of dollars as they live their lives in luxury, driving around luxurious cars that cost more than $100,000 that you actually paid for. Let's start first by going to these daycares filled with violations that still continue to receive money from the government.
All right, so Shirley goes out there, and Ash and I interviewed Amy Reichert, who is out there with him. Let me see if I could find a clip where she's in there. We interviewed Amy Reichert on Badlands Daily on Wednesday. She gave us about 20-25 minutes to talk about this. It was a good interview, very good interview. She's been working on this for a long time. She is a licensed private investigator. And she's been working this for a long time and thinks that this is a big deal. And this is even before I interviewed Amy, I was saying this is low hanging fruit. Like and I'm not saying that to, try and diminish the work that Nick Shirley's doing or that she is doing, Amy is doing. But if you think about this, right, in the private sector, if you had as a successful business, right, meaning you're employing more than a couple hundred people, your revenues are probably in the tens or maybe hundreds of millions. If all of a sudden you had an expenditure that doubled over the course of a year or two without any major change to your customer base, anything else, do you know what they would go after you for? You know what you would be investigated for if that happened? If you had a doubling of an expenditure and you had no other significant change to your business, do you know what they're going to look at you for? I'm going to wait and see if somebody picks this up in the chat. I know somebody's going to get this. The IRS would be all over you in 2 seconds. 2 seconds. I mean, in addition to fraud and all sorts of other things, they'd be going after you for money laundering. They would be looking at you for money laundering. So this is embezzling. Yep, that too. This is low hanging fruit. Embezzlement, money laundering, fraud, all sorts of things. This would set they will destroy your life as a small business owner, or even as a medium large business owner. They will destroy your life over this. And what do? We're just like, hey, it's all good in California. Let me get back to the video here. So you see this building right here. Let me get to a good picture of it. I want to get it somewhere where you can see like a good view. Hold on, bear with me. So this building that I'm scrolling, there we go. There's a great shot of how big this building is. So this building used to be, I would assume it was like a motel, maybe an apartment complex or something like that. And it's been converted to offices. First floor, second floor. I don't even know how many offices there are there. Almost all of them are either hospice or home health care. So you've got a two-prong attack from Nick Shirley in this video. You've got daycares and you've got hospice and home health care. Now, why do you think those would be the two biggest vectors of fraud in this industry, in this fraud network? It's actually so simple. It's so simple. Because children are unlikely to testify, especially preschoolers. And hospice, your patients die. Your patients are dying. So your victims, the people that they're using to get all this money from, are either too young to know anything and articulate a logical thought about this, or they're dying. It's a genius model to defraud the government, but it's also retardedly simple, and the government should be all over this, but they're not. And why? I think it's going back to Minnesota, because a lot of them either are directly in on it in worst case scenario, best case scenario, are aware of it and are able to gain benefit from it in some form or fashion. And there's no accountability for them because nobody's getting arrested over it. Tim Walz and Keith Ellison, the AG in Minnesota, the worst that they got was they got thrown in front of Congress and got railed on for about 2 minutes, or 2 hours. That was the worst thing that's happened so far. Is there going to be any action against this? I don't know. I hope so. Because if you don't have strong, stiff penalties for this, it's going to perpetuate. It's going to continue on and on and on. 5 years in a cush prison for these folks when they're making tens of millions of dollars is just the price for doing business. They're willing to sell away, and it's 5 years is what you're sentenced for. It ends up becoming 2 years, right? I've told the story before about the guy down here in South Florida that was defrauding Obama phones and made hundreds of millions of dollars doing it. Hundreds of millions of dollars doing it. He was caught, he was charged, he was convicted, and he was sentenced. And he's doing 5 years in a minimum security prison camp in Alabama. And he's probably going to be let go in about 2 years. So he gave 2 years of his life in a cush retreat, probably has massages and game hour and gourmet meals and all that bullshit. He gave away all of that, or he gave 2 years of that in order to have hundreds of millions of dollars. And a lot of that money got sent offshore. And a lot of this is probably the same thing. The reason the migrants are the ones doing it, perhaps, I'm speculating, but perhaps the reason the migrants are doing it is because they're sending all the money home. And it's very difficult to get your hands back on that money when they're sending it back to Somalia and Armenia and Mexico and all the other places. You do it in the U.S. and you can't hide that much money in U.S. banks. They will seize it as part of your plan. The guy that I'm talking about here sent over $50 million to, I believe it was Jordan. I think it was Jordan. It's fraud. It's easily caught and prosecuted, or at least shut down. At the very least, let's fucking shut it down. Right? You don't have to prosecute every single one of them, but how about you make it a little more difficult for this to happen? When you have this building right here, that should be a dead giveaway that you're taking housing. That should be illegal, right? California, right? The place that's all like, we love our people. We got to be we got to be loving and caring and compassionate for our people, and fuck the billionaires and fuck the millionaires and fuck all the rich people. And then they're like, oh yeah, you can turn this motel that could probably house about 100, 200 people. You can go ahead and turn that into office spaces to launder money through, to defraud the federal government through. Yeah, go ahead. That's fine. That's fine. All of those are hospice and healthcare buildings, offices, most of those, not all of those. Only sit still and absolutes. And then, of course, you see the cars, BMW M8s, G-Wagons, Teslas, all that stuff in there. It's a fucking scam, man. Here's another headline if you needed more proof. New York Post, New York City spends roughly $81,000 per person on homeless services, according to the comptroller. This number is up from $28,000 in 2019. So in 7 years, well, it's actually 6 years because it's a 2025 number. In 7 years, New York City has gone from $28,000 in spending per homeless person to $81,000. Think about that. $81,000. They are the homeless people in New York City right now are getting as much in subsidies and welfare than we make in an entire year. What is that video of? I do not need to see that. Let's go past that. Yeah. 81,000. The average income in New York City, the median income is $81,000, almost exactly. And so you as a hardworking, at $81,000 in New York City, you're probably you're not doing the most lucrative jobs, right? You're probably a mechanic. You're coming home greasy, garbage man. Who knows? There's a lot of different jobs, but these are blue collar jobs where you're coming home, you're working 40 plus hours a week, busting your ass, coming home with barely enough to survive. Meanwhile, the city is pushing $81,000 out to homeless people. Now, granted, this is not, and this is where, don't be mad at the homeless people. I mean, you can be, you can do whatever you want to do, but it's not them. This is these homeless people. They're not giving them a check for $81,000. These are people that are, getting a cot to sleep on, a cot. And that cot is like $1,000 a night is what they're charging. I don't know if it's 1,000. I'm saying I'm being not sarcastic. I'm embellishing a little bit here, or maybe I'm not. Bro, wouldn't that be funny if I'm being dramatic and then you come back and they're like, yeah, it's actually $1,500 a night for a cot. Yeah, that would be crazy if that actually came about. But anyways, a lot of this money, this just gets laundered back. It gets laundered out to their NGO buddies. They just, yeah, it's crazy, man. Let's see, where are we going to go next? We'll stay on the fraud here for a minute. We did get a lot of fraud exposés this week. We got this one from James O'Keefe in California as well. Earlier this week, JJ Smith in San Francisco, all right, put a video out where these NGOs were paying consultants to go out there and pay signature gatherers who went out and paid homeless people and other people to gather signatures. And they were paying these homeless people $5 a signature. So come here, sign this petition to get it on a ballot. It's a ballot initiative, a tax against billionaires. Sign this petition. We'll give you $5. Okay, I'll sign my name. No. Don't sign your name. I need you to sign this person's name. Oh. So you're not only incentivizing somebody to give their consent and have them sign a document that they don't even know what the hell they're signing, but you're doing it by having them pretend to be somebody else. I mean, how many more felonies can you rack up in one little sitting? Well, that was in San Francisco. James O'Keefe went to Los Angeles, and this is what he uncovered.
don't care. God, we're gonna give you $2. We just need 14 signatures.
The petitioner, Brenda Brown, hands cash money to the homeless person, not only for signing the California ballot initiative, but also as payment for them to register to vote.
Now, because you haven't registered, I need to register you so I can get paid too. I'm paying you guys, I need to get paid.
That is a federal felony. And it didn't just happen once, it happened over and over and over again. We personally witnessed and covertly filmed this happening at least 28 times over the span of our investigation, and that is just in Los Angeles. Many of the homeless have zero understanding of what it is that they're actually signing.
But what is that petition for? You know the petition for?
I do not know.
The petitioners instruct the homeless to enter made-up addresses like Pinocchio Lane.
Where do I put it in my address?
Yeah, just put up. You live on Pinocchio Lane.
Oh, you can just take it.
Oh, good.
And all of this occurring just outside the front doors of shelters and NGOs such as Weingart Center, which have received hundreds of millions of dollars in government money. One Weingart employee tells us when and where to find the illegal cash exchanges for signatures outside, and says the cash being given out is coming from a higher source.
Do you know if they provide the money that they're handing out?
Yeah,
The company does.
When they give the money out, they got to go back and tally up if they stealing the money or not. So they got to have signatures. Most of them they be right across the street under that tree. You can check with them Monday through Friday.
While another Weingart employee advises the homeless on how to practice plausible deniability and ignorance of the law.
See, they say ignorance is no excuse for the law. But a lot of times I have to say I didn't know. I had no idea.
Oh, that would be what he should
He should say.
Yeah.
The petitioners orchestrate an elaborate pyramid scheme of unregistered petition circulators.
If I were to hire you, you would be under me. Yes. I'm under my son, I'm under him, and you under me. So it's like a pyramid game. And really, I don't need you, you need me. I don't need you.
One of the petitioners threatens to attack one of our journalists.
All right, we'll land that there because O'Keefe did actually get attacked. And let's go ahead and share that one here real quick.
I got you. I'm not from out here. Leave him alone. Leave him alone. Get away from him. I'm not from out here. Get out of the way. Whoa. He punched him. Let's go. Go, James. Straight, James. Straight.
They don't want you messing up their cash cow.
Go. Make a left. Look, here's a petition right here. James, here's a petition right here. Hey, I was wondering, what can I get for us? Look, right here. Put this on camera. Right here.
Damn. Look at that. Caught red-handed.
What about the free phone? You signed the petition, right? Right here. The guy who broke the law in the video. Sir, can I look at the petition? The guy who broke the law in the video. Can I look at the petition? I'm not breaking any law. Can I look at the petition? For cigarettes for signatures. It's against the law in California. We ain't breaking the law, bro. It's against the law in California. They give cigarettes and cash. I ain't giving cash. I ain't giving nothing away. I give cigarettes. I do free cell phones. We have you guys on camera shouting money for petitions. I don't do money. We have you shouting money and cigarettes. I don't do money.
All right, so we got that there. They don't want you messing up their money pot, right? They don't want you getting involved in that. Law enforcement, nah. Get cops out there breaking this shit up, nah. Bring these people in and find out who's paying them and work your way up the chain, nah. We don't actually want to do anything about any of this. Again, the system is utterly fucking broken. And it's because of accountability. It's all because of accountability. There is no accountability. There's no desire to go up the chain and figure out who the fuck is doing this. Why? Because they're benefiting from doing it. The people that would go and do this are benefiting from it. And they're protected. They're insulated. They have plausible deniability. These NGOs that are funding this have plausible deniability. I don't know what you're talking about. You know, it's like you see in the movies. Hey, don't say the crime to me. We talk very broadly about it. Are you wearing a wire? That kind of shit. And then they go out and do it. And then when they come in, they're like, hey, did you know that the firm that you hired another firm who hired another firm who hired a bunch of homeless people to go out there and give out $2? I had no idea. Just because you didn't know doesn't make it legal at all. So there needs to be a new system for this. There needs to be a new system for this, and there needs to be accountability. And it's just utterly broken, man. We did get this here, President Trump signing the executive order, or signing, excuse me. Yeah, it is the executive order making JD Vance the fraud czar. Now, here's the thing. I'm cautiously optimistic about this, about JD Vance going in and figuring this out. Man, let me play this first and then we can talk.
This is a very big thing that we're doing. It's about fraud, having to do with all the fraud that's taking place in our country. And we have two people that are extremely brilliant and just very talented, and they're going to be put in charge. But I'd like to ask Will, if you would, to give a little description of what we're signing, the executive order, and then I'll ask JD to speak.
Yes, sir. As you stated in your State of the Union address, in light of widespread revelations of fraud in federally funded programs in states like Minnesota and California, this executive order in front of you will establish a new task force aimed at rooting out that fraud, returning potentially billions or tens of billions or even hundreds of billions of dollars to the American taxpayer. This task force will be chaired by the vice president. The vice chairman will be the head of the FTC, Andrew Ferguson, who's with us here as well today. But this is going to launch a whole of government approach to rooting out the very serious problem of fraud in federally funded programs around the country.
All right, so let me pause right there for just 1 second. I do want to let the folks over on X know we are now past the 1 hour mark. I usually shut down the X stream around the 1 hour mark. Crystal clear transparency. I'll always be as honest as I can. It's for my own gain. I need to grow Rumble and YouTube more so than X as platforms. To, you know, I do this for a living. So if you guys want to jump over, I would greatly appreciate if you jump over to Rumble, rumble.com/CanCon. I will put while this video is playing, I will put the link in the Twitter or the X chat. You guys can just click that, jump on over. I do appreciate you guys all joining me over on X. Thank you very much. Got a lot more to talk about. Haven't even gotten into the Iran Joe Kent thing or what else we got. I mean, we've got a lot more stuff to talk about, probably another 2 hours that will go here. So again, thank you guys all so much for tuning in over on X. I'm going to shut it down when this video is over. I'll jump over there right now and put the link in the chat.
As an example, you know, you've been seeing it and seeing it pretty big in Minnesota, $19 billion. But that's only for one little aspect of the fraud. It's $19 billion, and California, as they say, is 10 times worse, and other states are 10. And this is not a Republican-Democrat thing. This is wherever it's taking place. It seems that it's usually in blue states. If it's in a red state, we're going there too. But it seems that it's heavily, heavily, heavily Democrat. And what they've done is so sad. When you look at the Minnesota scam, a lot of it has to do with Somalia. Nobody's calling out anybody, but a lot of it has to do, but it's Somalia and plenty of others. And I believe the governor is complicit. I believe Ilhan Omar is complicit. I believe that your attorney general is complicit. And if they are, you're going to hopefully find out about it, and you're going to have to do what you have to do. if we found half of the fraud that's taking place in this country, and I think you have a chance of doing that, we would have much more than a balanced budget. That's the kind of numbers you're talking about. The theft is incredible. And I think JD will make, and Andrew will make a charge later on that local states should handle nursing homes and all of these things that the federal government shouldn't be involved in. It's too big. The federal government should handle military and a couple of other things. But when it comes to nursing homes, you saw where a young gentleman was going around and knocking on doors, and none of the nursing homes existed, none of the nurseries existed. The money that's being paid out, and the federal government pays for it. When you see all these people coming in illegally into our country, many criminals, many drug dealers, murderers, 11,888 murders, and you look at California, and more come in, and yet they never had money, and yet they pay them. You know why they pay them? Because the federal government is charged with paying. We're not paying them anymore, and I said that. So these two really smart guys are going to be, I think it's going to, hopefully it's going to be JD's. This will not be like a Kamala where she was put in charge of the border and she never went there, JD, right? You promise?
I promise, sir.
Remember Kamala was put in charge. She was the border czar. She never went to the border. She never called.
All right. So that is the big takeaway from this. What he just said right there, that, you know, this isn't going to be the same as Kamala, right? This is a guy. And by the way, guys, I am going to shut down X now. So hop over to rumble.com/CanCon, CANNCON. I put the link in the X chat. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. If you don't decide to hop over, we appreciate it. Smash that thumbs up, hit the repost, and we'll see you guys next week. And also follow me on Badlands Media. All right, there we go. And then there was just Rumble. So that's the big thing right there, is JD Vance has aspirations to be the president of the United States. There's no question about that. We all know that. And if JD Vance wants to be president, he needs only to look at Kamala Harris's campaign, and one of the worst things that happened to her during that campaign, other than the fact that she's a complete retard, is the border czar issue. You were the border czar and you never even went to the border. You were the border czar and you did nothing about the border. It was the worst border in our history. And it's all true. It's all true. But it was all used against her. And so if what President Trump is doing right here, I am very confident in this. He is putting the pressure on JD Vance to achieve. He has to produce. He has to. This cannot be something that Democrats and establishment Republicans, assuming that JD gets the tip for MAGA, which I'm not all the way there yet. He's not bad, but I'm not all the way there on that, on JD. But he has to do something here. And so the other aspect to this, and this is the one that's a little bit give or take concerning, is JD Vance has a tremendous network of tech bros, right? Coming out of Yale, always concerning. The network of, you know, the Peter Thiels of the world that are in JD Vance's camp can absolutely do big things with this, if it's not already done, by the way. It's not lost on me that this is coming out at the same time as Nick Shirley's video. Like, this was almost planned, right? We when we talked to Amy, he had said that this recording is months old. The Nick Shirley video is months, plural, old, meaning this took place a while ago. Now, granted, there's a lot of film to go through. There's a lot of editing. There's a lot of legal that you have to go through before releasing something like this, redacting names, censoring people, all that shit. So I get it. It's not like you go out there and you film it and then you instantly upload it and boom, there you go. So he did this last week. This is something he did a couple months ago. Was it strategically released with this announcement? My guess would be yes. And so, has there been work being done on this in the background this whole time? I hope so. I really do. Again, this is low-hanging fruit, in my opinion. This is something that is easily found. Oh, you mean there's a building with 40 hospice offices in one? How many people are dying in Los Angeles every day? Or San Diego, excuse me. I think I said Los Angeles earlier. San Diego, close enough. How many people are dying in San Diego every day that you have a one building with 40, 50, whatever, home health care and hospice offices in the same freaking little square area? And how are they all so successful that they're driving $150,000, $200,000 cars? I'm very optimistic. Now, the downside to this, the second part. So the first part, JD Vance has to perform. There's no downside to that. If he doesn't perform on this, it will be a what do they call the thing that you hang a millstone around his neck in the 2028 election, assuming it's not President Trump. It will be a millstone around his neck. It will weigh him down and drag him to depths if he doesn't get this fraud fixed. On the flip side, over the over surveillance, entering the surveillance state via AI, artificial intelligence, and other technological means is concerning to me. Does the end justify the means, or do the means? Are the means serious enough that it could justify the ends? Having mass surveillance via AI in order to take out the fraud that we're witnessing right now. In other words, is it worth it to open Pandora's box and allow artificial intelligence to figure out loopholes in order to spy on American citizens? Again, some of these people are citizens. All right. Not all of them are illegal immigrants. Not all of them are, visa holders and whatnot. Some of them are actual American citizens. The TPS has been going on long enough that you have birthright anchor babies that are now becoming of age. So is it worth it to unleash AI on this specific purpose if it leads to mass surveillance? If it leads to precog, right? Pre-crimes through the precogs, Minority Report. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. And this is coming from somebody that, I've never even been put in handcuffs in my entire life, nonetheless charged with a crime. Never been put in handcuffs, nonetheless charged with a crime. And I still don't want artificial intelligence going through that. Because I'm sure I've committed crimes. I'm sure of it. Everybody does. The crimes in this country are the U.S. code and state codes are so extensive that I'm sure we've all committed felonies. Do we want Uncle Sam going through using AI to just... I hope not. What am I missing out on? Aeolus said I'm missing out. What am I missing out on? What am I missing out on? If you drink enough, even a wormhole, it's worth making a pass at. Is the chat rocking right now on this? We have mass surveillance now and no one knows where the kids are going. Scarfinger, you're right. You're right. It is better to tie a millstone around your neck and be cast into the ocean than to harm even one of my children. Amen. Amen. Christ is king. JD cannot prosecute or pull funding. He can ask DOJ and Treasury, who can completely screw JD. Correct. However, that would be in a report, and we would see that report. Oh, handcuffs. Oh man. Okay. I plead the fifth. AOL is getting me in trouble. All right. Where are we going next? We're done with that. I think. Oh, you know what? Let me cover this real quick because we did cover the FISA Warren Davidson, representative from Ohio, and Zoe Lofgren, Democrat from California, have introduced a FISA reform bill. And, we talk about this on Daily as well. And this is some of the requirements. We'll do this very quickly because this bill is not, there's no desire to pass this bill. This is like publicly known that this is going to be dead on arrival, even more so than the Save America Act. Why? Because they don't want to reel in their own power. They never do. Save America Act would reel in their power by having at least slightly more legitimate elections. They don't want to do that. So what do? They kill it. FISA. They've got FISA broadly now. If you've read Government Gangsters, Ash and I did it on Badlands Book Club a few months ago, maybe 7 months ago, maybe a year ago. It's probably been a while now. God, time flies. Time freaking flies, man. Shit. But yeah, so check out that. But Kash Patel rails on FISA courts and how opaque they are. There is no transparency in them. There's no court recorders. The judges are on 3-month rotations where they come in, they get a case. By the time the case is heard and the decision's made or whatever, a new judge is in place and has to make a decision based on just, broad knowledge. It's disgusting. They're able to manipulate the FISA courts however the hell they want. Essentially. So here's Warren Davidson, Zoe Lofgren's attempt to reel it in. Section 702 of FISA allows the government to conduct foreign surveillance for security threats without individual court orders. However, these authorities have strayed from their original anti-terrorism intent and instead allow the government to search Americans' private communications, such as internet activity, phone records, text, photos, and additional digital metadata without obtaining warrants. The bill that the Government Surveillance Reform Act would represent the most comprehensive reform to surveillance laws in nearly half a century. The bill requires the federal government to get a warrant to access Americans' private communications gathered under Section 702 with important exceptions for emergency situations. I don't like the emergency situations exceptions because that term gets stretched very quickly. Very quickly, emergency situations become almost anything. However, getting a warrant to access Americans' conversations, even if they're having conversations with a foreign national, or I'm behind that 100%. I'm behind that 100%. Just because our government dictates somebody as, I don't know, whatever, detrimental to the United States, whatever you want to call it, terrorist, just because our government deems that all of a sudden limits us from being able to talk. Like, how, man, if you really want to get crazy, how many people and governments and countries has our government labeled a terrorist simply so that we cannot get their side of the story? Simply so that we can only hear the propaganda about that particular group, country, whatever, that they want us to hear. And anybody who tries to make contact with them or talk with them is immediately labeled as a foreign agent and arrested. I mean, they're doing it to Tucker right now. But remember when Tucker went over and talked to Putin? You know how much pushback he got from that? He at least talks about it. I don't know if it's true or not. But he goes over to Russia and talks with Putin, and people railed on him for it. All right, the bill bans the federal government from buying Americans' data from data brokers without a warrant. Well, sign me up for that. The bill prohibits using surveillance on foreigners overseas through Section 702 as a pretext for gathering data on Americans. I've told this story before. They'll take somebody that's under FISA investigation overseas. If they've emailed you, called you, texted you, whatever, even if you don't respond, it opens you up as, the second or third degree from that person. And so I've had my speculations before that, I get all these emails from foreigners that are asking me to get in contracts for oil and all this other, chemicals and energy and all this. And I'm like, I have nothing to do with that business. I wouldn't even know where to begin on starting a business in those fields. And here I am receiving these emails from people alleging that I applied for contracts or I asked for this information. How do I know somebody didn't just sign me up and because they emailed me, that opens me up to FISA? It's a genuine concern that I have. I mean, am I hiding anything? Absolutely not. But do I have conversations about elections and other things like that with people? Not so much in email, but I do. And, we talk a lot about stuff. So is it possible? Probably not. I'm probably overthinking this and overreacting, but it's still concerning that the means for them to be able to do it are there based on that. Okay. It repeals a controversial 2024 expansion that allows the government to force millions of Americans and companies to secretly spy on its behalf. That's concerning. Protects Americans from intelligence agencies using non-statutory authorities, including prohibiting backdoor searches and reverse targeting outside of FISA. So there it is. Again, these people will not give up their own power. They only expand their power. They never reel it in. They never say, okay, that's come and gone. That's come and gone. We're good, right? The Patriot Act, right? The Middle East, those people in the caves are going to bomb us and kill us. And well, that never came to fruition, but we still have the Patriot Act, and they're expanding it well beyond anything we could ever imagine. Maybe it's time to repeal that. Maybe the DHS non-funding is a good thing, and shatter it into a million pieces and splinter it into the wind and let ICE fall amongst DOD or DOW. Let FEMA rest with the National Guard. That's the way all this shit was supposed to be. We weren't supposed to have DHS operating in 70 plus countries, 90 plus countries, having headquarters in foreign nations. Department of Homeland Security. Homeland Security. But they're operating in all these foreign countries. Make that make sense. All right, now it is, in fact, time to hit a sponsor. So let's go ahead and talk about our friends over at Rumble Wallet. Get this pulled up here. And all right, there we go. Here's a little inside scoop that many creators are talking about behind the scenes. It's actually one of the reasons I'm using Rumble. In addition to the absolute consent to free speech that Rumble has been, the beacon of free speech that Rumble has been over the last 6 years, this is also a reason I use it. The way they made a way to super chat creators so we get paid immediately and without any fees. YouTube and Twitch take up to 50% fees when you tip creators, and this method will take none. That's right. The platform takes 0 fees, and I get to keep nearly 100% of whatever you send over to me. You can super chat with Bitcoin, Tether USD, or even Tether Gold stablecoins. The tip will show up directly in our Rumble chat, which I will always do my best to read. All you need to do is download the Rumble wallet to the App Store and send the tips to your favorite creators. You can go to wallet.rumble.com, or you can download the app directly in the App Store. Seriously, what an amazing way to get rid of the middleman and help the creator economy. Shout out to Rumble for making this disruptive technology. All right. And yes, I for some reason it freezes whenever I do those. So I should be back now. Maybe not. There we go. Now I'm back. Yeah, it's kind of weird that it does that, but yeah, I have no idea. Let me jump in the chat here for a second. Yes, Aeolus, we are definitely all being surveilled. The difference is until they legalize a lot of it, which some of it has been legalized, it's difficult for them to use that specifically in court. However, and this is something me and Alpha have talked about before, if you're able to illegally surveil somebody and you get the, it kind of tips you off on where to go to do the next thing, right? Like, so if I think somebody murdered somebody, and I break into their home and I find, all this stuff in the home, none of that is admissible in court. However, you find clues onto how to finagle your way into getting that information. So then all you have to do is figure out how you're like reverse engineering the warrant. Instead of gathering probable cause to go get the warrant, you get the probable, you execute the warrant without being allowed to. You get the probable cause, you figure out how to introduce the probable cause in an affidavit, and then you go and do the search. So it's like reverse engineering a warrant, except you can't get caught reverse engineering it. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Now, I'm not aware of how much that happens, I got something in my beard. I'm not aware of how much that happens, but I'm sure that happens. Big Brother is not a fan of Rumble. No, they are not. Big Brother hates Rumble. That's why we get so thwarted here on Rumble. How's YouTube doing? What we got going over on YouTube? YouTube, we've got 48 watching on YouTube. We've got almost 500 watching on Rumble. I've got more followers on YouTube than I do on Rumble. That's how bad it is. Hey, YouTube guys, smash that thumbs up if you have not done so. I appreciate that. I think I'm monetized on YouTube now. I don't know if you guys are allowed to super chat or not, but I might have to set something up on that. All right, let's get back into the news. Where are we going now? So Just the News put out a bunch of stories this week about the China interference in our election. And I do believe, I've always said that I think John Solomon is kind of a signal, right? John Solomon's reporting is signal, especially and mainly when it's a rehash. And this China thing is a rehash, right? We've known all this stuff. Maybe we get a little more details on something, but I got a feeling that when John Solomon starts talking about something, pay attention to it in the coming days or weeks. And so Solomon put out, well, Dunleavy put this out, but through Just the News, Solomon's platform, U.S. Intel hid Chinese 2020 election meddling from Trump because they opposed his policies. It says U.S. intelligence community analysts were saying that they didn't want their intel used by the, quote, that vulgarian in the Oval Office, end quote, to pursue policies towards China that they personally disagreed with. This is following analytic ombudsman Barry Zuloff, who conducted a review of the spy community's handling of the Russian versus Chinese meddling efforts during the 2020 election. And this is where the vulgarian comes from. Jump down here a little bit, and it says, well, we don't need to get into this. Again, this is a rehash story. So basically what they're saying here is that the intelligence agencies treated the Russian meddling versus the China meddling differently. And the China meddling got a lot more attention and had lower thresholds, I guess you could call it, had lower thresholds than the I actually like my mic this way because I'm not fiddling it with it all day. And it kind of keeps me stationary. And I just completely disrupted my own train of thought. Son of a bitch. Such an ass. Anyways, Russian versus Chinese meddling. You're seeing how the Russian meddling was handled to thwart President Trump in 2016 and then kind of gaffed off. But brought forward because of the 2016 narrative as Russia was really trying to meddle. But China was not. China, nothing to see here. But then you go and read the reports and you find out when you read DNI Radcliffe, his report, that the CIA, he disagreed with the intelligence community reports that were required to be submitted to the president in 2020. He disagreed, and now we're finding out that a lot of the reporting, these analysts were withholding information from the report or skewing the information because they didn't agree with President Trump. That is horrifying. And this will kind of segue a little, well, I don't think we're ready to segue just yet, but this will come into the Joe Kent story, right? Joe Kent disagreed with the president, so he resigned. He didn't go on and try and subvert the president. He didn't try and again, I still, you cannot convince me that that's not an op, that Joe Kent is not doing this deliberately, but we'll get into that. But he didn't go and deliberately try and destroy the president. He didn't try and, throw a monkey wrench in any of the plans or anything. He said, I don't agree with this. I'm out. And that is the admirable, honorable thing to do. Now, the best thing to do is what I believe Tulsi Gabbard is doing. I don't think Tulsi Gabbard agrees with this at all, but she is saying, hey, it's the president's decision. I serve at the pleasure of the president. I will continue to do my job without invoking my personal feelings. And that is the most admirable thing. However, Joe Kent did this probably the second most, and that's resign. If he felt like he couldn't do the job anymore, and he has a personal interest because his wife was killed in one of these intelligence community wars in Syria, and I totally get that, and he said, I just can't do this. So the stark contrast from these analysts who deliberately withheld information from President Trump because they didn't like him. All right. So last thing on the Solomon story, we got this little clip on Bannon from him.
There are scores of raw intelligence reports that show Chinese meddling in the American election. And there's one report raising concern that Ukraine was engaged in a plot to do something bad in the 2024 election to help Joe Biden. I want to repeat that. There is intercepted intelligence that the Trump administration has had for many, many months, in which it is suggested by Ukrainian officials that they're going to try to help Joe Biden win the election using American taxpayer money. There are scores of raw intelligence reports that show Chinese meddling.
Okay, sorry. So the other country, of course, Ukraine. And then let's fast forward to Tulsi Gabbard's testimony in Congress this week.
Director, the ODNI has confirmed on the record that your office took custody of voting machines from Puerto Rico last May. I'm not aware of any previous DNI taking similar actions. Did your office promptly notify the committee about taking custody of Puerto Rico's voting machines?
I don't believe we did. However, this was done at the request of the Puerto Rico AUSA attorney.
Ma'am, it's a yes or no question.
The
The answer,
FBI.
as you have acknowledged, is no. You did not inform the committee about the taking of a territory's voting machines. Is there a specific foreign threat? And I've read the reporting that you were looking for possible foreign threats, but is there a specific foreign threat that drove you to take this action?
There were questions about whether or not there were vulnerabilities that a threat could have taken advantage of, and that was the purpose for their requesting us to look into those vulnerabilities.
Where are those voting machines now?
I believe they are held in a secure facility at ODNI.
Have you or other ODNI officials taken any other state or territory's voting equipment into custody?
Not to my knowledge.
All right, so going back to the Puerto Rico story here, where Reuters broke that story exclusively, and I, of course, had to correct the record because Reuters said that they were going after Venezuelan interference, and I was told by my sources that that was not true, that they were asked to be there by the Puerto Rican government, the AUSA, and the Puerto Rican government asked them to come down and do this. They seized the machines, they voluntarily handed them over to DNI, and they're going through them. And that scares the shit out of these people. That scares the shit out of them. The idea that we're finally getting to crack open these machines and look through them because they violated their contracts with Puerto Rico. We had Mark Warner. So this was the House testimony, I believe, because she had to go before the Senate and the House. And this was the House testimony. And I believe she also, well, no, I know she testified before the Senate. And Mark Warner went full retard about Fulton County. And so Gabbard is, she is, in my opinion, she is probably the second most important person in this administration behind 45-47 himself. Behind President Trump, she is probably the most important person. Yeah. And it's because of this work right here. It's because of this work right here. God bless Tulsi Gabbard. Keep it up. Let's jump over to CNBC. U.S. judge upends Kennedy's overhaul of childhood vaccine policies. The judge basically turns around and says, you guys, the vaccine, what is it called? The Vaccine Advisory Panel, the VAIP, I think it's called. Anyways, the ACIP, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Protocols or whatever. This judge did not rule that the vaccine policies are illegal or anything. He ruled the entire panel is illegal. He ruled, and this is kind of their new modus operandi. This is kind of their new thing that they're doing. They just, you're illegal there. We've seen it with Alina Habba as the U.S. attorney. We've seen it with who was the other one in New Jersey? It was Haba, and then who was the other one? Halligan. Halligan, they did it with her. They just did it with the 3 U.S. attorneys that were the temporary leadership, although that story was crazy, and the judge was actually correct in that one. These 3 that took over the New Jersey attorney's office, they got a plea deal out of a pedophile, and as the judge was going to sentence the pedophile, the judge is reading over the plea deal, and he's like, holy shit, you guys completely ignored all this evidence that this guy is way worse than just, trying to reach out to an underage girl to get her, to meet up with him. Way worse. The guy had child porn, bestiality, prepubescent porn, like all this stuff on his phone. And these 3 in the DA's office, or the U.S. attorney's office, were just overlooking that, and he was getting like a slap on the wrist in comparison. So you got to call it both ways. You got to call balls and strikes here, and that was a ball. That was a ball from the New Jersey attorney's office and a strike from the federal courts. The federal courts got that right in New Jersey. Now, granted, there could be underlying circumstances as to why the New Jersey's attorney general, U.S. attorney's office, didn't do their due diligence on this. Perhaps because they're fighting in court every single day just to have leadership, because the Senate refuses to do anything because it's a feckless body that can't do a goddamn thing. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But anyways, so this story here, so this judge right here, I think this was Brian Murphy. Let me just fact check myself. Yes, Brian Murphy. He was the guy that literally just got overturned in the U.S. Court of Appeals like 2 days before this over the deportation order. He made an order that President Trump could not deport illegals to third-party countries. The U.S. Appellate Court in his district, I think it might be the second appellate, overturns him. And then like 2 days later, he rules that Robert F. Kennedy's entire advisory committee on immunization practices is null and void, and therefore the rescheduling of the childhood vaccine programs is null and void. Has nothing to do with anything. There's no health warnings there whatsoever. Like it's not related to whether or not the vaccines are effective, whether or not it was a logical decision. No, you're just illegitimate. A judge ruling that RFK does not have that authority. Check out this clip here from Lindell TV about vaccines and a McCullough Foundation investigation into 300 reports. They ran it through AI, large language models. Granted, take it with a grain of salt, but the results were pretty interesting.
We fed it into 3 AI LLMs, 3 AI models, Grok, ChatGPT, and Gemini. And we asked it, read our study, do vaccines cause autism? And every single one, Grok, Gemini, and ChatGPT said yes, the vaccines cause autism after reading the 300 studies in our report. So this is absolutely unequivocal. We demonstrated that the vaccines, the childhood vaccines, are the single most dominant modifiable risk factor for autism. We fed it into.
So large language model goes through, interprets 300 studies on the vaccines and comes to the conclusion that they are causing autism. And then a judge shoots down the panel that would have significantly hindered the vaccines, reduced the number of vaccines that we're taking. Burn slots. Who was POTUS when COVID-19 started? Oh, the retards are out. The retards are out. It would be President Donald J. Trump. Who was POTUS when vaccines were mandated to the American people? I don't care what the AI large language model says. They're 80% inaccurate in my experience, but I can agree with the conclusion. Yes, that is true. I think that when you get a consensus of several of them, it's a little more legitimate, but ultimately, yes, you are correct. Hallucinations, all sorts of things. The funny thing is though, is usually they're correct when it toes the establishment narrative. This refutes the establishment narrative, which is interesting because it's drawing this. Now, granted, I wonder how they prompted the AI. Did they say, read these 300 reports and also read, a counter report to this, like read the alternative side of it and see how that goes. So yeah, I don't know. Burn slots. Trump paid billions to get the Vax Pass testing. Look up Operation Warp Speed. Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're new here. Fucking retard. Yeah. If Trump didn't spend billions, they would have had us locked down for 5, 6, 7 years waiting for that to happen. Trump expedited it for a reason and then told you use your own cognitive ability to determine whether or not you're going to get it. Joe Biden says you have to get it or you're going to be fired. You're going to be kicked out of the military. OSHA's going to piss off, man. Not even worth my time. Let's keep moving. All right, so we'll get into the Iran Joe Kent story here. Top Gabbard aide resigns over Iran war. Okay, so Joe Kent resigned. I think we all are pretty aware of this now. This was Tulsi Gabbard's response right here, and Tulsi Gabbard takes the high road here. We alluded earlier that I believe that Tulsi Gabbard is against this war, is against the war with Iran broadly. Again, my own personal opinions here, but I believe that, oh God, Trump locked us down. Trump did not lock us down. We're in Florida. We never locked down. Unless you lived in Broward, Miami-Dade County, we never locked down. So how did everybody else lock down because of Trump, the federal government? You're so utterly retarded, dude. You're treading water right now in a kiddie pool. You're in the kiddie pool while we're swimming out amongst the sharks. You have no idea what you're talking about, dude. You are just towing your fucking CNN propaganda. So I'm just going to go back and talk about my stories. Donald Trump was overwhelmingly elected by the American people to be president and commander-in-chief. As our commander-in-chief, he is responsible for determining what is and is not an imminent threat and whether or not to take action he deems necessary to protect the safety and security of our troops, the American people, and our country. The ODNI is responsible for helping coordinate and integrate all intelligence to provide President and Commander-in-Chief with the best information available to inform his decisions. After carefully reviewing all the information before him, President Trump concluded that the terrorist Islamist regime in Iran posed an imminent threat, and he took action based on that conclusion. That is the proper response. That is a nonpartisan, down-the-line response from Tulsi Gabbard. Beautiful response. And that is exactly what I would have expected from her. And this is why I was saying before, there's degrees of what I believe, are acceptable reactions to this war. And first and foremost, you have Tulsi Gabbard, which has the perfect response for her position. That is the nonpartisan, down the middle, stay and do your job, stay in the fight. And you have Joe Kent, who has a personal interest in it. His wife died in Syria, Gold Star husband, which you don't see too often, to be honest with you. Gold Star husband, and it just weighed on him too much. And he left rather than staying there, subverting and thwarting the president. He decided to do the right thing and resign. I'm okay with that. But I also believe that there's more to that story. So let's, everybody was saying that Joe Kent was left out of the intelligence and that the FBI is investigating him. This stemmed from the Semaphore article right here with the exclusive that FBI investigates intelligence aide who resigned over war. Now, Joe Kent has gone on the defense on this. He's done a few podcasts, which again is bizarre, very bizarre to me. He's gone out and done a few, he did Tucker, he did Megyn Kelly, he's done a couple others. I did listen to most of the Megyn Kelly one. I listened to all the Tucker one, and I listened to most of the Megyn Kelly one. The Megyn Kelly one came after the Tucker, so by that time, the FBI investigation and the claiming that he wasn't in on these intelligence briefs was out by then. He refutes those. He says he did not leak any information. Even Megyn Kelly pushes back and says that the only thing they could see that may have been leaked from him was Mark Levin's conversation with the president. They go on to say that wasn't classified. That's not a leak. And everybody else was reporting on it too. So, again, for the FBI to investigate. This is sounding more and more. It's already starting to get unraveled. The FBI investigating him, if they actually even are investigating him. And it's sounding more and more like Dan Caldwell. And back in April of 2025, I still remember driving to the Lakeland Badlanders, Florida Badlanders meetup, 3-hour drive, 2.5 hour drive. And I was listening to Tucker interviewing Dan Caldwell days after he was fired from the Pentagon. Are we seeing the pattern here? Caldwell, anti-war with Iran, gets dismissed from the Pentagon, goes on Tucker almost immediately following. Joe Kent, anti-war with Iran, he resigns as such, declares it, goes a step further, throws more fuel on the fire, and then goes on Tucker, and then goes on Megyn Kelly, goes on all these other shows. Well, if you needed any, and by the way, then you get the FBI investigation into Joe Kent. We also got an investigation into Dan Caldwell for leaking information. I don't remember if he was specifically classified or not, but for a leak. So you've got mirror stories. I mean, they're running parallel, different timelines, but they're running parallel to each other so far. So we just got this for those that didn't see Daily from Fox News. Ousted Hegseth aide resurfaces in intel role as Iran war sparks internal strain. What was the date on this article? March 17th. So 4 days ago. This was after Joe Kent resigned. So if you needed signal, potential signal, again, I'm speculating here, but if you needed signal that all of this was kayfabe, this is your kayfabe signal. This is the bat signal being shot up in the air to say, hey, this Joe Kent story is malarkey. There's more to it. We don't believe he's, again, I'm purely speculating here. But while they're saying we're opening a criminal investigation into Joe Kent over leaking classified information, Joe Kent turns around and goes on a podcast. Guys, use your head. When does somebody that's a notable figure that's involved in a target of a criminal investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigations, when do they ever go on a podcast and talk freely about that kind of thing? We've all heard that I can't answer that because of pending litigation, those types of questions, right? But we didn't get that. We get the media tour. This thing's being litigated in the media, and I think it's deliberate. So there's data point number one. Dan Caldwell, same mirror story as Joe Kent, gets thrown into DNI. It's also not crazy for me that he gets thrown into the same agency that Joe Kent just left. It says Dan Caldwell's return to a sensitive intelligence role comes less than a year after he was publicly accused of leaking classified information, allegations that have never been publicly substantiated, and as the Trump administration navigates an escalating war with Iran. The hiring also places a prominent advocate of a more restrained U.S. foreign policy inside the intelligence apparatus at a moment of growing internal tension. And then it goes on to talk about Joe Kent being removed. Now, another data point here. Let's go ahead and jump into this here, the Tucker interview with Joe Kent. And most of you guys have probably heard this by now, maybe.
I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation. How did you reach that conclusion?
I think this is key. I mean, this would be more challenging to explain had the Secretary of State, the President, and the Speaker of the House not come out and said that we conducted this attack at this time because the Israelis were about to do so. So that takes away the argument that there was an imminent threat, as in Iran was planning to attack us immediately. That just simply did not exist.
May I ask you to pause? And so I've heard people say that, and this just happened, but history has a way of getting rewritten in real time. And then you look back 10 or 15, 20, 25 years later, and no one seems to understand the things that you saw because they've been eliminated. So I think it's important to stop and say, here's what we actually know. So I'd like now, if we could, just to play one of the statements that you alluded to, and that's from Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. And this was shortly after this war commenced. And he was explaining as is his habit, in a thoughtful, precise way, why. Here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act.
Okay, so that is his almost contemporaneous explanation, and it's not offhand. He reasons it out. He explains there's a logic chain there, and he says, we knew not that Iran was going to attack. He did not say that.
Right.
He said we knew that Israel was going to attack Iran, and in retaliation for those attacks by Israel against Iran, Iran might attack American forces. So the imminent threat that the Secretary of State is describing is not from Iran, it's from Israel.
Exactly. And I think this speaks to the broader issue. Who is in charge of our policy in the Middle East? Who is in charge of when we decide to go to war or not? In this case, with what the secretary described, and later on the president, later on the Speaker of the House, and the way the events played out, the Israelis drove the decision to take this action, which we knew would set off a series of events, meaning the Iranians would retaliate. Now, I think there's a potential there where we could have done several different things. We could have simply said to the Israelis, no, you will not. And if you do, then we will take something away from you. I think that it's fine that we offer defense to Israel, but when we're providing the means for their defense, we get to dictate the terms of when they go on the offensive. Otherwise, they stand to lose that relationship. And the Israelis felt emboldened that no matter what they did, no matter what situation they put us in, that they could go ahead and take this action, and we would just have to react.
All right. So for those of you that have been watching this show 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now, 3 weeks ago. Yeah, 3 weeks ago now. I was going to bed at, 1:30 in the morning. It was late. And I don't remember, wife and I were watching something on television or whatever. And I saw the text. Actually, the first person I saw not report it, but the first person I saw it come across on my feed was from Ash, that Iran was being attacked, or that Israel and U.S. was attacking Iran. And I was like, holy shit, no way. And so I didn't pay much attention to it. I woke up in the morning. I saw this. I started going through, reading all the different sources. I don't limit my sources to any particular outlet. I got the mainstream Mockingbird media here. I got the alt-right here. I got the RT and the Iran state media. I got the European globalist media, all of it, and started reading as much as I could. It took me like that show that day was not a week in review. It was simply this going on right here. And I myself, and I'm not read in on any intel or anything like that at all. The day after it happened, I came to the same conclusion that Joe Kent had, that Israel forced our hand. And, if you want to see, like on Thursday, Josh Reed joined us on SitRep with me and Alpha. And me and Alpha disagree on this, kind of not on everything. I mean, there's a lot of things that Alpha and I agree on with this war, but the cause of it, we do not agree on. And the justification for it, we do not agree on. And Josh is kind of like in the middle of both of us, I think. And I don't want to, again, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but this was so what I think happened, and I agree with Joe Kent here, is it's not like Israel did it and we were blindsided or whatever the case might be. I think people say, well, why didn't we just let Israel attack and then just kind of like let them deal with the consequences? Well, because the consequences, this is where the imminent threat comes. If Israel attacks Iran, we are on that chopping block, period. We're guilty by association for anything Israel does to Iran because of that, staunch support for them. So I think that there is a lot of truth. And then Rubio comes out and says the thing that we played here. And then, to be fair, President Trump comes out, I think, like within a few hours at an Oval Office press conference. And I think that Marco Rubio was there as well, and says, no, if anything, we forced Israel's hand. If anything, we forced Israel's hand. Maybe by the U.S. getting involved as well and joining the attack. We did. Who knows? But again, it doesn't look good with President Trump responding to Rubio, kind of covering that up. Because then, again, I'm looking at markers, data points, comms, signal. This was the next thing that we got from President Trump. This was the day, I think, after the Tucker Joe Kent interview. Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East, has violently lashed out at a major facility known as the South Pars gas field in Iran. A relatively small section of the whole has been hit. The United States knew nothing about this particular attack. Wait, President Trump would never be blindsided by Israel. President Trump has absolute authoritarian control over everything that takes place on the global scale. No, he doesn't. I know we want to think that. But there are things that you just don't know. It's impossible for you to know. So that was the argument, is you guys think President Trump is really inadequate and inefficient enough that Israel could pull this off without his consent? Yeah, I do. And I also think the United States would have to respond immediately, because we would be the next target. We are on that targeting list for Iran if they get struck by Israel. That's the imminent threat, in my opinion. That's not to say that the U.S. was not planning an attack. Data points. Witkoff and Kushner were meeting with Araghchi on Monday. From Thursday to Monday, you get the strike on Saturday. Any sort of negotiations with Iran on the U.S.'s behalf is detrimental to the Israeli government, but specifically to Bibi Netanyahu. So here we have Israel going rogue again. After Joe Kent comes out and says what he says, you get him going rogue again. Let's jump over to Bibi's press conference.
These opening remarks with one other fake news, and that is that Israel somehow dragged the U.S. into a conflict with Iran. Does anyone really think that someone can tell President Trump what to do? Come on. President Trump always makes his decisions on what he thinks is good for America. And may I add, I think what is also good for future generations.
Imagine standing up there and saying, does anybody think anybody can tell President Trump what to do? And then President Trump is truthing out that Israel did this attack on the South Pars oil field, which, by the way, is split between not just Iran, but you know who else is involved in that oil field, in those gas fields? Qatar, who is one of our strongest allies in that region. So Israel bombs a facility that is a joint operation between Iran and Qatar. So Bibi doesn't tell the U.S. because nobody tells President Trump what to do. I agree with him wholeheartedly on that. Bibi Netanyahu is not going to come to President Trump and be like, you have to do this. Trump would be like, fuck you. But if you do it on your own, we have to react because there's consequences for those actions. And if we don't react, now we have to react on multi-fronts. And one's going to be very public. That's the attacks on Iran. The other one is the pee-pee slap that comes from behind the scenes that we don't see. That's the coin, the term I've coined. And pee-pee slaps have varying degrees, man. There's the light little flick, which sometimes can inflict the most pain. But then there's the full-on punch you right in the... And I think that's what happened. That's what I believe happened. And every single time we move in a direction that causes some sort of a fracture between the alliance, pose the question to anybody, what has Israel ever done for the United States to ever earn the moniker of our greatest ally. Can we be allies? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But somebody, please tell me what they've ever done to be our greatest ally. I can remember being in Afghanistan, seeing Brit patches, Jordanians, Germans, French. I remember talking to a JTAC, or as a JTAC. I wasn't a JTAC, but impromptu, improvise, adapt, and overcome. But talking to an air controller that was speaking French and pilots that were speaking French trying to call in strikes. They spoke English, but they had the French accent. Oui, oui. Never saw an Israeli patch over there. Never saw a Star of David on anybody's uniform. But our greatest ally. So let's keep moving, because we there are some new developments in this. But let's stay on the Netanyahu thing for a minute here. CNBC, Netanyahu says Iran is being decimated, but a revolution requires a ground component. Yeah, there it is. He said the Iranian people must ultimately, quote unquote, rise to the moment. Quote, we can create the conditions, but they have to, they have to exploit those conditions at a certain point. Oh, it took away my favorite quote. Why did I not highlight this quote? I'm sorry. I failed you folks. Quote, you don't want to replace one Ayatollah with another, Netanyahu said at a press conference. You don't want to replace Hitler with Hitler. There it is. Invoke the Holocaust. There it is. Hitler with Hitler. The Ayatollah is now Hitler. He's killed 6 million Jews. Invoke Hitler. That's like the automatic way to get the Judeo-Christian Zionists here in the United States to rise up. Invoke Hitler. You guys are Hitler, you anti-Semites, because you're saying we don't want to get in a war with Israel. Still 100% support Donald Trump, guys. By the way, you can do both things at the same time. You can trust Trump's discretion on this war, his discernment, and you can still not want ground troops and a prolonged war against Iran. So here you got Netanyahu now calling for ground troops, and then you got this. Oh, wait, not this story. Skipping over. I think it's this one. We'll get to that one in a second. Deployment of Marines to Middle East raises specter of ground troops in Iran. The Pentagon's decision to send the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, a 2,200 troop force to the Middle East, is fueling new speculation about whether the conflict with Iran could involve U.S. ground troops. It could take up to 2 weeks or the end of March before the unit is in place, and it is presence unlikely to significantly shift the dynamics of the war on its own. So you've got a battalion of Marines steaming towards Iran right now. Things will get spicy when you bring the Marines in. 2,200 Marines. I mean, look, we love to, as a Marine myself, we love to pat ourselves on the back and say how badass we are. There ain't shit we can do with 2,200 Marines. There's very little we can take a if Karg Island, right? If Karg Island is the target, we could take Karg Island, no problem. 2,200 Marines easily. Couldn't sustain ourselves there. Could not sustain ourselves. We could hold it for probably, I don't know, maybe a month, maybe. Perhaps, I don't know, but it's not, I'm not too concerned about this. The Tripoli also has, I think it has 20 Harriers and F-35s, vertical takeoff F-35s, as well as some attack helicopters. So there is a strategic significance to them being there beyond just the 2,200 Marines. 2,200 Marines can also conduct operations on vessels if there's, ensuring peace throughout the Strait of Hormuz, right? If there's boats that are attacked, pirates, whatever the case might be, the Marines can fight against that as well. So it's not just a ground invasion. I hope we don't see a ground invasion. There's a lot of allusion to it from, the certain characters on from our greatest ally, but I don't think we're getting that from President Trump. He actually pushed back against that. I do want to get into this story because this is something on February 28th, when I woke up and I said that I think Israel forced our hand on this. This kind of has a little bit of an interesting take to it. CBS News, UN nuclear watchdog chief says a lot has survived of Iran's nuclear capabilities. The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog said that, quote, a lot has survived Rafael Grossi, director of the International Atomic Energy Agency. I think on Thursday's SIDREP, I was calling it IEPA, and I meant to say IAEA. I said the International Atomic Energy Agency, but I think I was calling it IEPA, and I don't know where the hell that came from. But the IEA, so it's close to IEPA, but it's not exactly there. It's the IEA. Because you always have to add a sound to these acronyms. You always have to have like METTEC in Arizona, right? Like JSOC for Joint Special Operations Command. Like everything we do in the military and in acronyms in general, you try and put like an actual sound to it. So IEA versus IEPA. Rafael Grossi, director general of the IEA, said, quote, "There's been a lot of impact on the program. One cannot deny that this has really rolled back the program considerably. Although, I'm very skeptical about these metrics, whether it's days, minutes, months, because everything is relative. But my impression is that once the military effort comes to an end, we still inherit a number of major issues that have been at the center of all of this." Grossi said that one of those issues is Iran's inventory of uranium at 60% enrichment, as well as facilities, infrastructure, and equipment, which could be damaged. By the way, 60%, I'm just going to say it again. I've said it so many times. 60% enrichment is not weapons grade. 60% enrichment is not weapons grade. 60% enrichment is not even in violation of the nuclear non-proliferation treaty Iran has signed. Let that sink in. All of these warmongers saying Iran's going to have a nuclear weapon, they haven't even violated the treaty that all of us, and this isn't the Obama, treaty. This is the nuclear non-proliferation treaty that every nuclear power and others have joined, or aspiring nuclear power, except Israel. Israel has not joined any nuclear non-proliferation treaties, despite allegedly having nuclear weapons, reportedly having nuclear weapons. It's not a violation. If you don't like the rules, then change the rules. But in the meantime, respect the rules. That one always pisses some people off, man. The boomer neocons, like Lindsey Graham's, those people, they get so pissed when you bring that up. The Lindsey Graham's, the Mitch McConnells, the full-on warmongers. It doesn't matter if it's 10 times the amount necessary for civilian nuclear power. That doesn't matter. The law is the law, and by law, I'm broadly saying treaties are law, which they're not. They're nothing more than worthless pieces of paper that anybody can apparently, renege on any time. So, but it doesn't matter. There were also negotiations to bring that enrichment down to 1.5%. That was actively going on with Witkoff and Arakchi at the time that for all intents and purposes, we'll say Israel and the U.S. launched the attack, which means you guys that are like, oh yeah, it was totally the U.S. You're saying that Donald Trump had a plan to a peaceful diplomatic solution to this and said, no, I'm choosing war. That makes no fucking sense. That is counterintuitive to everything that Donald Trump has represented for the last 15 or 20 years. And I think it's absurd to think that Donald Trump saw a potential diplomatic solution, gave them 10 to 15 days, and then said, you know what, screw it, we're just going to go in. As his son-in-law was negotiating the deal. And this guy right here, Rafael Grossi, said that there was progress made. Is it there yet? No, but there was progress made. I think it is patently absurd for anybody to think that Donald Trump, given his track record, went in on his own unilaterally to decided to do this. I think Netanyahu forced his hand, and I think Trump had to respond, because if he didn't, our bases would have been obliterated, because Israel by itself could not get the job done. But they kicked the hornet's nest. The hornets fled the nest, and they would have destroyed our bases in that region. That is what I think happened. Joe Kent seems to agree with me. And look, you guys can have your opinions. I'm totally cool with that. I completely can acknowledge that I'm just observing what I'm observing. I'm looking at his track record. I'm looking at what I've known for the last 10 years, 20 years about Donald Trump and his position on these things. I've read Art of the Deal. I've read tons of work and, you know, interviews and everything else from him. None of this makes sense. This is like if you ran this through a large language model, if you ran this through a large language model, they would say, I believe it would come back and say that most likely my speculation is correct. I firmly believe that. Firmly believe that. All right. So the Grossi story. Defense Department has prepared several options for the president regarding next steps in the conflict. Trump has not made up his mind on whether he would send U.S. forces into Iran and seize its nuclear material. Grossi said removing cylinders with the material would be difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible. I know that there are incredible military capacities to do that, but it would be very challenging operation for sure. Grossi said the IAEA did not see, quote unquote, major activity by Iran to rebuild its enrichment capacity before the U.S. and Israeli strikes, but said, quote, a lot has still survived. This is in line with the fatwa that Joe Kent was talking about, the agreement with the Ayatollahs that they're not going to pursue weapons-grade uranium. This has been something that's been acknowledged by many, including Tulsi Gabbard. Where's that? Oh, man, I don't think I have that. Yes, I do. We'll get to it when we get to it. But Tulsi Gabbard has said that we obliterated their nuclear capabilities in Operation Midnight Hammer. Netanyahu said the same thing. President Trump said the same thing. And Gabbard said that there was no perceived imminent threat. They were not pursuing. There's no evidence that they were pursuing a nuclear weapon. We'll get to that. For the interest of time, I'm probably going to cut some stories out here. I do want to real quick talk about another sponsor, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sticking with me through this. Ever feel like your phone is eavesdropping on you? That's because big tech treats every user's life like a corporate paycheck. It's time to stop being the product. Millions are making the move to MeWe, the place where private connections and online communities actually thrive. On MeWe, privacy is a human right, not a hidden setting. They don't track users, they don't sell your personal data, and they truly believe in free speech. No shadow bans, just real conversations. Join the 21 million people talking about taking back their digital lives. Click the link below to get started. Use code WELCOME2026 at checkout to grab 20% off MeWe Premium. All right. And follow me over on MeWe. I have a MeWe. So follow me over there. Man, I tend to really trigger the chat. Yeah, that fatwa is now definitely void because we killed the Ayatollah. Of course it's void. Although I think he was dead, to be honest with you. What do we got in the chat? I love making people. I don't love making you angry, but I love how this is such a fracturing, high friction issue. And I love you guys. I love everybody, man. You guys can disagree with me completely on this, and I would welcome the debate. I would love to have the debate. I'm sure we will at GART Nashville. I'm sure we will have this debate many, many times with many, many people. I'm sure people will approach me and try and change my mind on this. And I just don't think you can. I share why we vote on MeWe. Thank you, Liberty Line. I don't see it. Spotzel says, I don't see a deployment that large as a negotiation tactic. You mean 2,200 troops? Three young men in Iran were hung for protesting the Ayatollah. I can't spell that. That's what we were told. Again, we have a captured media, and I'm not saying that the Iranian state media or anybody else is any better. I think all media is captured. So all you can do is assess both sides of the story. And I challenge you, Ms. Whatley, to assess maybe like RT or is it ISL, Iran state media? Assess the opinions or assess the story from their perspective as well. Were they hung because they were protesting, or were they hung because of other things? color revolutions, intelligence operatives operating, Mossad agents are rife throughout Iran. They're all over Iran. They were throughout Iran. And then what's his name? Not Khamenei, but the guy that just got killed. Not Lafrigri, not Ali Lafrigri. I can't remember the guy's names. These names are not like John Smith to me. But he was just killed. The guy that was the intelligence minister and famously said, we've rooted out Mossad from our ranks. He was just killed. Were they double agents? And that's the thing you always got to wonder. So again, like, to me, that's clickbait rage. 3 people were hung for protesting the Ayatollah. Clickbait rage, in my opinion. I haven't, and I don't entertain those kinds of stories. I think they're just, you could say the same thing over here. We had 3 Americans that were killed in January 6th and I agree with that. But we also have firsthand knowledge of that. And if you read the media, these were people that were trying to break into the Capitol and beating up police officers. That wasn't true. So my point is there's a lot of propaganda, a lot of fog of war on a lot of these stories. So do rants. It's such a high friction issue. Why can't we all just sit around, Iran, Israel, the U.S., watch dog memes, laugh, and get over our individual difference? Make dog memes great again. I'm with you. I am with you 100% on that, Andrew. All right, let's keep moving here. I told you I was going to call some audibles. Okay, here we go. I'm going to piss off more of the people who fight with me on the Netanyahu forced the hand remark. This is Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, who I am very bullish on. I love Pete Hegseth as Secretary of War. Hate this.
$200 billion. I think that number could move. Obviously, it takes money to kill bad guys. So we're going back to Congress and our folks there to ensure that we're properly funded for what's been done, for what we may have to do in the future. Ensure that our ammunition everything's refilled, and not just refilled, but above and beyond. I mean, President Trump, as he said, rebuilt the military in his first term. Didn't think he'd use it as dynamically in his second, but he had. So thank goodness he did that. And an investment like this is meant to say, hey, we'll replace anything that was spent. And now that we're reviving our defense industrial base and rebuilding the arsenal of freedom and cutting deals like our great deputy secretaries here is doing, long lead times on exquisite munitions, we're going to be refilled faster than anyone imagined. And I think, we're also still dealing with the environment that Joe Biden created, which was depleting those stockholds and not sending them to our own military, but to Ukraine, which is every time we reach back and look at any sort of a challenge we have, it goes back to, send it to Ukraine. Ultimately, we think this should be these munitions are better spent in our own interests at this point, and this kind of funding bill is going to ensure that we're properly funded going forward.
All right, so there it is. Chalk up another $200 billion. Well, it hasn't passed yet, but proposed $200 billion, and always ask high, so they'll probably get less than that. But from the Associated Press, AP seeks $200 billion in additional funds for the Iran war. It says an AP source says, but Hegseth just confirmed it right there. That's what they're asking for, not that that's what they're going to get. Pentagon sent the request to the White House, according to a senior administration official who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the private information. He asked about the figure at a press conference, blah, blah, blah. It's an extraordinarily high number and comes on top of extra funding the Defense Department has stop calling it the Defense Department, AP. You're going to get kicked out. Are they still kicked out of the press pool? Probably because of something like this. They refuse to call it Gulf of America. It's the Gulf of America. That's official. It's also the War Department, not the Defense Department. I do think we need a Defense Department. Like maybe, that's, to be honest with you, that's where DHS should go. DHS should be lumped into the Defense Department, lumped in with the National Guard, still have state sovereignty, and pull your resources from enforcing laws against American citizens and deal with the external threat. Yeah. Anyways, going way wild tangent right there. This comes atop extra funding from the War Department, already received last year from President Trump's big tax cuts bill, and would need to be approved by Congress. It's not all clear such spending would have political support. I don't think it would. While the House and Senate are controlled by the president's party, many of the more conservative lawmakers are also fiscal hawks. That's fucking hilarious. That's hilarious. With little political appetite for big spending on military operations or other matters, the requested amount would be a hefty boost to the Pentagon's annual budget, which Congress approved more than $800 billion. So $800 billion plus $200 billion puts us at $1 trillion. $1 trillion. Dr. Evil, Mr. Evil, Dr. Evil. Yeah. That's on top of $150 billion that Congress gave to the War Department in last year's tax cut bill, much of it for specific projects and overall upgrades to the Pentagon's operations. To muscle a package to passage, Republican leaders could either try to go it alone through an arduous budget process or cut deals with Democrats on top of other priorities that would likely balloon the overall price tag. So in other words, if we want to pass this, we either have to work with Democrats, which is going to mean it's going to cost us a lot more money, because Democrats, our Congress doesn't actually work and say, hey, we need to make this less. You're asking for $200 billion. Let's see if we can get this down to like $40 billion instead of $200 billion. And then they come back and they say, well, how about $150 billion? And they say, how about $80 billion? How about $100 billion? Okay, deal. That's not how our Congress works. Our Congress comes back and says, the Democrats come back and say, we're not going to show any support for this bill because it's $200 billion. And they're like, what do you want? And they're like, well, thank you for asking. We'll give you $200 billion, but you got to give us $50 billion for this and $30 billion for this and $10 billion for this. That's how our government works, and that's fucked up. You cannot survive with people that are trying to make themselves fat and nasty all the time, and that's what they all try and do. And so that's exactly right, that if they go this alone, then what, you got to nuke the filibuster to pass this budget through to get the funding? Good luck with that. You won't pass it for the Save America Act, but you'll pass it to make us pay another $1,300 each. And by the way, that's the cost. $200 billion is about $1,300 for every tax-paying American citizen out there. Raise your hand if you've got $1,300 laying around that you want to give to the government to go fight this war. This is going to be wildly unpopular when you look at it through that context. Again, I think our troops need what they need, but if you can't get it out of an $800 billion budget, what the fuck are you doing? Russia's been fighting Ukraine, which we've been funding this whole time, but Russia's been fighting Ukraine with 1/10 of our military budget, our defense spending. 1/10. And we're a month into this, and we're like, hey, we need another $200 billion. We need every taxpayer to reach down and pull out $1,300 cash and send it up to Washington. I want to play this clip here. This is allegedly, this is Lauren Boebert.
I will not vote for a war supplemental. No, I am a no. I've already told leadership I am a no on any war supplementals. I am so tired of spending money elsewhere. I am tired of the industrial war complex getting all of our hard-earned tax dollars. I have folks in Colorado who can't afford to live. We need America First policies right now, and that I'm not doing that. We need the Save America Act, FISA with warrants. There's a lot of hard lines that I have right now, and we've got to get our act together if we want to keep this majority. And the path that we're going doesn't look very promising.
Should the administration get out of Iran?
That's up to the president.
I don't know who that is, but she's not wrong. I'm not a big fan of Boebert at all. Not a fan of hers, but she's not wrong. It's also interesting because she is a representative from Colorado, which has a massive defense industrial complex. Massive. And yeah, so when you piss her off with that, that's kind of interesting. I'm not going to play that. I don't think that this is one of those things. This is why I think this was an op. And I got some consensus from this on Thursday as well. Frog Monkey says, CanCon, both you and Alpha have said Israel never has boots on the ground with the U.S. troops. In the wars that we fought, there was never Israeli boots on the ground with us, ever. Not that I saw. I mean, and I'm not talking about like when I was outside the wire and the sticks and having to fight. I'm talking about like when I was at Camp Leatherneck walking around and going to the British Isle, the Jordanian side. We would go around. So when we were coming in and out of Afghanistan, you're traveling and you're processing for like a week to 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks before you actually get out to where you're going to be operating out of. And so when we were in Leatherneck, you know, my first deployment, we were boots. So you're kind of like restricted. You get like a couple hours where you can go out, and they have vans that drive around the base and take you to all the different places you want to go. And there's routes and everything. It's like a city. It really is like a city. There's grocery stores, because there's people that live on that base their whole deployment. And so they have grocery stores, they have, you know, restaurants, not like nice restaurants or anything. Don't get crazy. These are still like Connex boxes and mobile trailers and stuff like that. But there was Green Bean Coffee at Domino's. There was MWRs, which you could go in and play video games and TVs and cable and movies and books and all sorts of stuff. And everybody had their own little sections. And you had the British section, the Jordanians had a section, the Germans had a section, and you could go visit them. And it was kind of cool because we'd be walking around in like the British section and get a different take on culture and have talks with stuff. Yeah, Scarfinger worked out of Bastion. Bastion was pretty cool. Bastion, I think, is the one that had the Domino's. I think Camp Bastion had the Domino's, and you'd want to go there, but that was like the longest bus ride. And so like you had to plan going to Bastion. Because if you go to Bastion and you're stuck there and you got a formation or something like that, you're going to miss the formation because it takes you like an hour to get there. But yeah, Camp Bastion was pretty badass. That's, I think, where all the air wing was, right? So anyways, the bottom line is I never saw any Israelis there. That's it. That's my story. Could they have been operating in plain clothes? Sure. All right, I did have another section on the Kent stuff. So let's get to that. Here we go. Got to jump over here. It looks like we might actually get the Joe Kent, Mark Levin interview. So Mark Levin said right away, let's go through the storyline here. Joe Kent, I would like to interview you on my radio show either tomorrow or Friday or one day next week for a full hour. I don't know how to reach you. Have your people call my people. Joe Kent responds, sure, let's go. And then yesterday, so that was on the 18th. Yesterday, is that yesterday? That's today. Today, Joe Kent says, I have Mark Levin. I've not heard from your team. DMs are open, and I have the same cell as I did in 2024 when I was last on your show. To have an in-depth conversation, we should talk in person on your weekend show on Fox. What do you say? Dun, dun, dun. I want to see that happen. I want to see friction. I want to see Joe Kent, who's saying Israel did it, Mark Levin, who's saying Joe Kent's an anti-Semite. I want to see that conversation. You'll see the loomers and the other kind of Zionist crowd saying don't do it, and then you'll see the doomers on Israel controls President Trump saying don't do it, don't go on Levin's show. So you've got both factions. You've got the far Levin side and the far Kent side all saying don't do it. I'm saying hell yeah, do it. Hell yeah. I want to see every perspective I possibly can. I want the tough questions. This is why I don't get a lot of interviews. This is why we get people that are not favorable. Why I was surprised Stephen Richard came on Why We Vote. But this is why we don't get a lot of interviews, because I'm not going to ask some chicken shit questions. I'm not going to bow down and be like, oh, please tell me how great you are for an hour. No, I want to know the nitty gritty. I want the friction. So let's play this clip here. I saw Ghost shared this out, and this is let me get it pulled up here. Sorry. Stand by. My screen is like frozen right now. I can't get it to pop up. Okay. So this is University of Chicago political scientist John Mearsheimer talking about Iran's oil.
I think it's hugely significant. And I think the fact that President Trump issued this post where he made it clear how angry he was at the Israelis for doing this is evidence of that. Look, President Trump is doing everything he can to keep oil prices under $100 a barrel. And that is not easy to do. And I would note that he has taken sanctions off Russian oil and he has allowed Iran to sell its oil. It's very important to understand that Iran is selling its oil on world markets. Iran has been allowed to send oil through the Strait of Hormuz. And the reason that Trump is allowing this is because he wants all the oil he can possibly get in the world oil markets. And he's been quite successful, at least at keeping the price of a barrel down under slightly less than $100. Well, what happened yesterday when the Israelis hit this natural gas field in Iran, and then the Iranians retaliated first against Qatar, and now apparently they're attacking Saudi Arabian sites as well, is that the price of a barrel of oil is going up. I saw it was up around $115 this morning. This is disastrous for the United States and for the world economy. And if things continue to escalate, which is a real possibility, the economic situation will only get worse. Yeah. So what happened yesterday really mattered. And that, again, is why President Trump made it clear to the Israelis, don't ever do this again.
All right. So University of Chicago political scientist John Mearsheimer talking about that. We also had this post from Barak Ravid. And if you've watched any of the coverage that Ghost, when I have Ghost on Badlands Daily, he often says Ravid is kind of like Trump's Israeli, kind of insider, so to speak. And Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, put this out yesterday, I believe. Let me make sure. Yeah, this was yesterday. Iran is the head of the snake for global terrorism, and through President Trump's Operation Epic Fury, we are winning this critical fight at an even faster pace than anticipated. In response to Iran's terrorist attack against global enemy infrastructure, the Trump admin will continue to deploy America's economic and military might to maximize the flow of energy to the world, strengthen global supply, and seek to ensure market stability. Today, the Treasury is issuing a narrowly tailored short-term authorization permitting the sale of Iranian oil currently stranded at sea. At present, sanctioned Iranian oil is being hoarded by China on the cheap. By temporarily unlocking this existing supply for the world, the United States will quickly bring approximately 140 million barrels of oil to global markets, expanding the amount of worldwide energy and helping to relieve the temporary pressure on supply caused by Iran. In essence, we'll be using the Iranian barrels against Tehran to keep the price down as we continue Operation Epic Fury. This temporary short-term authorization is strictly limited to oil that is already in transit and does not allow new purchases or production. At least not yet. That's me adding that. At least not yet. Further, Iran will have difficulty accessing any revenue generated, and the United States will continue to maintain maximum pressure on Iran and its ability to access the international financial system. So far, the Trump admin has been working to bring around 440 million additional barrels of oil to the global market, undercutting Iran's ability to leverage its disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump's pro-energy agenda has driven U.S. oil and gas production to record levels, strengthening energy security and lowering fuel costs. Any short-term disruption now will ultimately translate into longer-term economic gains for Americans because there's no prosperity without security. Now, Ravid catches on a few bullet points and puts it out there. U.S. allows Iran to get $14 billion in oil revenue. Oh, wait, we're at war with Iran and we're allowing them to rake in $14 billion in revenue? Why would we ever do something like that? Again, are we seeing stories that are kind of old already and the new regime getting to the rebuild point? I don't know, maybe. This is a huge financial concession to Iran by the U.S. It's the first time the U.S. is buying Iranian oil since 1996, and it's all happening in the middle of a war against Iran. Now, I'm openly, we talked, a minute ago about, I like the friction. I like the open discussion, debate. I like having dialogue with people. This is a monologue show. It's just me. I will jump in the chat here as we start to wrap up. I will jump in the chat and have conversations with you guys in the chat about this. But yeah, this is a story. I can see the effect that this is going to have on China. I acknowledge that. And that's, one of Alpha's contentions, or one of his, not contentions, but one of the things he says. And I can agree with that. I can get behind that 100%. That this is having a China is by far, China is the most affected country by this. By far. So, What do you guys think about? I don't want to do the call-ins, but what do you guys think about for maybe the last half hour? If somebody wants to jump on, like for those of you that watch Badlands, John does Daily Herald, and we'll just put the StreamYard in the, well, I can't do it on this. Yeah, I guess I can do it. Let me get to our last sponsor and then get through the rants, and then I'll see if you guys, if anybody wants to jump on and just have a discussion about this. You can push back against me. You can agree with me. You can tell me something I'm missing or something I got wrong. Let's have a discussion. But before we do that, let's hit our final sponsor of the show. Still haven't tried 1775 coffee yet? Now is your shot. The 1775 starter kit just dropped with only 1,000 units available. You're getting the bold, dark roast that hits hard, the smooth medium roast, and the Vitality mushroom coffee for clean energy and laser focus with no crash. All single origin, small batch, toxin free, and mold free. Plus, you're also getting a gold spoon clip because Freedom isn't scooped with plastic. You're getting a frother strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's opinions, and a black 1775 tumbler, $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for just $99. This is for the ones who've been watching 1775 blowing up on Rumble and wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler, it is. Go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something, just like Rumble does. All right. And thank you to all of our sponsors for today. We've had MeWe, we've had 1775 Coffee, we've had Rumble Wallet, and we appreciate all of that. And let me see if I can get, when I unfreeze here. Unfreeze. Hello. Unfreeze. Unfreeze. I look like a clown, man. I'm like, oh, am I frozen again? I loaded too much into that. Oh, there we go. All right. Let's hit our final sponsor real quick, and then we'll get into rants and see if we can get some heated discussion here. We all love heated discussion, right? There we go. All right, there we go. All right, most of y'all know that I have been a precious metals guy for a long time, especially silver. I love my silver. If you have watched any of my shows in the past, I talk about silver quite a bit, and I love it. Love it. But whether you lean silver, gold, or both, the issue right now is your purchasing power, and that is the part that people miss. Everything costs more: groceries, utilities, insurance, and that same retirement money you've got stashed away, well, it doesn't stretch like people think it does. A lot of retirement accounts are still tied completely to paper assets, stocks, bonds, and the US dollar. That's fine until your purchasing power gets chipped away year after year. It's called inflation. Then people realize that they're more exposed than they thought. And that's why some people look at gold and silver inside their retirement accounts, not to trade, not to speculate, just to diversify a portion and reduce risk. If you want to understand how gold, silver, IRAs actually work, the rules, the structure, what you can and can't do, there's a company called Augusta Precious Metals that focuses on education first. No hype, no pressure. It stays inside your IRA or 401k, no taxes, no penalties. You're not moving everything. You're just learning how this all works. And if you want to dig into it, click the link in the description below or text CanCon to 35052 to get your free gold and silver IRA guide. Get informed first and then decide what makes sense for you. Again, you can text CanCon to 35052, and I'll throw that up there on the thing. And thank you to Augusta Precious Metals. Big fan of silver, big fan of gold, bigger fan of silver, but also a big fan of gold. And let's jump into the chat and see what was the consensus. Press a 1 if you guys want me to put the StreamYard in there and have you guys jump on to fight me. I'm just kidding, not fight me. You guys aren't fighting me. I'm a very friendly guy. And Ash always says I'm too nice. So, it is what it is. Yeah, throw a 1 up if you want me to put the number in there. In the meantime, I'll jump into. Did I not? I swear to, geez, this is crazy. The rant thing disappears whenever I try and do this. So they're not there. So here we go again with this crappy ass stuff. Who is that gave me the first rant? Let me see. Aeolus, $20. Let me take this down. Share this tab. Oh, I'm on the wrong screen. So that's normally where the rants pop up, but they're not for some reason. So does it pop up now? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So Aeolus with a $20 rant. Thanks, Brian. This has quietly become one of my favorite shows on Rumble. I also grew up in Oakland Park, Wilton Manors area. Ooh, that's the gay pride area. Wilton Manors is like the gay community. And it's actually it's really nice. It's not my cup of tea, but I've been there several times, and I have a gay family member and gone to restaurants and bars and stuff. The bars are a little creepy, but the town itself is really nice. And it's not all gay. It's not like everybody that lives in Wilton Manors is gay, but it is the gay community. And that's where they had the bar thing where they took kindergartners and or not kindergartners, but elementary school students to a bar and did a thing there. And there was a nasty menu and all sorts of shit. But hey, Oakland Park and Wilton Manors. I'm close to Oakland Park, but I'm on the west side. I'm way out by the Everglades, whereas Wilton Manors is by the beach. Artsy Joan, love your Saturday show, Brian. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate you. God bless. Oh, and the portrait is becoming one of my favorites. Don't tell Ash. That's because I have cuter dogs than Ash's. I'm just going to throw that out there. Ash might fight me over that and cut me, but it is what it is. Everybody thinks that their dogs are the cutest, though, so that's to be fair. Brian, I'm curious how or if your opinion of Rubio has changed post these Iranian strikes. No, I don't know. I've said that I'm a fence sitter on this issue, and I am. I'm not going one way or the other, but I heavily lean, but I'm not going to conclusively say one way or the other. No, my opinion on Rubio hasn't changed yet. I haven't focused on his words as much. I mean, they're throwing all this information at you that you're missing a lot of the other stuff going on behind the scenes. I think everybody is kind of getting in line with President Trump on this because I think they're looking at this. To be honest with you, I think there's a lot of evidence that they're looking at it the same way I am. Cautiously optimistic, but scratching their head at wondering what's going on. This is not textbook Trump. This is not I think Iraq was stupid. I'm going to say it. I think it was big, fat, stupid people that made the decision or whatever it was they said to Jeb Bush in the debates in 2016. I don't think this is the Trump we're seeing right now, and there's a reason for that. Now, what that reason is, I don't know. But I think everybody's kind of staying in their lane right now and hoping to either because they're read in or because they're not read in and they don't know what's going on. So it is very interesting. Okay. It's such a high friction issue. Why can't we all just sit around? I read that one. Why can't we all just sit around Iran, Israel, the US and watch dog memes, laugh and get over our individual differences, make dog memes great again? I'm with you 100% on that. Elwood C. CanCon, want to bet me MEF is to keep an IDF an IDF surge out of Iran. Ooh, that is an interesting take. That the Marine Expeditionary Force, we call them MEU, Marine Expeditionary Unit, but I could get the Marine Expeditionary Force, is to keep an IDF surge out of Iran. Interesting. I don't think the IDF goes into Iran unless they have U.S. backing. That would be suicide for those troops. I don't think we've obliterated their the capabilities as much as we're being told. You know, the things that were direct threats to U.S. bases and assets in the region, sure, but ground troops, I don't know. Makes sense to me. We will know if Bibi forced Trump's hand, and Trump said that he maybe pushed Israel to save face. By the way, Trump treats Bibi going forward. He did strike the nuke facilities to stop Israel first. He did strike the nuke facilities to stop Israel the first time. Yes, I agree. Makes sense to me. Makes sense to me. That's I've said that since that took place, that we had to get involved because Israel would have kept fighting. Israel would have kept going, and Iran was showing restraint. And, you know, it's, again, in the campaign when President Trump said, Khamenei called me up and said, hey, Israel struck us. We got to retaliate. So you're going to see these missiles, 17 Keck, land all around your base. And I think it was Baghdad or Syria. I can't remember which base it was specifically. But Trump disclosed to us that he had communications with the Ayatollah about this, with the Iranians about that. And he's like, they got to do it. And so I think there is a dialogue between Trump and the Iranians that we have no idea about. And I think there's a lot more to this. I think the Meerkat, regarding all the fraud, that money should be spent on our vets, because what do we do for them now? And this is a video here. We'll jump over to this right quick. Oh, this is a long video. Oh yeah, I can't play that right now because I'll get flagged. But yeah, that's a great song by Five Finger Death Punch. Great song. Got played out though. That's the only bad thing about it. That song got big time played out. That song came out while I was in the Corps 7 years ago. No, okay, maybe not. Maybe it was after. Came out in 2018. God, 2018 was 7 years ago, guys. 8 years ago. 2018 was 8 years ago. 2018 was 8 years ago. Ugh. Meerkat reminded me of that. All right, let's keep going. I think that might be all of the rants. Oh, no. Boo-boo-a-foo. Boo-boo-a-foo. Bob Boo-foo. Good to see you. Does it bother you that I always joke around with your name whenever you leave a rant? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Says thanks. Bob Boo-foo. Boo-boo-a-foo. I can never say that name. It's like anonymity was for me a while ago. Maybe one day you can show me or tell me how to say that name, and then I'll be like, okay, now I'll remember it forever. And it's probably like Bobby-few. Bobby-few. I don't know. All right, guys. I think we're going to land it there. We're at 2 hours and 45 minutes. I think we'll land it there. What was the consensus on the chat? I did see some ones. 1, 2. Just 2 ones. So we're gonna pass on that for this time. But maybe next time, if I have to make a unique stream key. That's the only problem, because if I do it now, it kind of screws things up. Unless I ask, well, I could put permissions. All right, guys, if you have not done so yet, please smash that thumbs up. We've got a little over 640 people watching, and we've only got, let me take that banner off. We don't need that banner up. Text CanCon 35052 for more information on gold and silver and diversifying your savings or getting gold and silver. 243 thumbs up. We could do better than that. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. I deeply appreciate it. Keep your heads above water, man. You know what? There was one thing I didn't play. There's one thing I didn't play. I promised that this is like the greatest piece ever. This is the greatest piece ever because this shows you how much kayfabe we're actually living through right here. Harry Enton Love Harry Enton. I love him. Love the guy. His shows, and not because like he says the things we want to hear or anything. I just love his excitement, his enthusiasm for what he's doing by spreading fake news.
And this is one of those, because just take a look here. MAGA GOP view of Trump. Approve 100%. 100%. If you are a member of MAGA and the GOP, you approve of Donald John Trump. 0% say that they disapprove. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to know you can't go higher than 100%. He is the 1972 Miami Dolphins. Now, there are some Republicans who disapprove of Donald John Trump, but they are not members of the Make America Great Again movement.
You know what this reminds me of? Like, it reminds me of like a movie or a cartoon where like the authoritarian comes in and all of a sudden they control everything and they're like, you will say that I am so popular. And they're like, yes, my lord, he is the most popular ever. That's what Harry Enton sounds like right here. Nobody's putting that pressure on him, by the way. This is totally, in my opinion, this is totally an op to try and fracture MAGA even more than it already is, because what are people going to turn around? Nothing. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. Nothing. No poll is ever going to be 100% unless you ask somebody, and I don't even know if this would work, is the sky blue? And people will be like, 100% it's blue, 100% of people. No. You're going to get like one or two people that are like, well, it's, at sunset, it's kind of reddish, orangish, yellow. And then at night, it's dark black or, whatever, gray, whatever you want to call it. So it's not always blue. Are clouds always white? Well, they could be gray. There is no 100% on anything. This was the most retarded, fake and gay news I've ever seen. And I don't know what Harry Enton's goal is with this. Not Harry Enton necessarily, but whoever put this poll forward. I don't know what their goal is on this, but that is like hysterically funny. Like, to think that people are going to watch this and be like, yeah, we got to. If you're not 100% behind Trump, you ain't MAGA. Harry Enton said it, so it's got to be true. That's bullshit. That is bullshit. And that is not at all what President Trump stands for. Now, President Trump has made some remarks like, I'm MAGA, I made MAGA, and he ain't MAGA because I made MAGA. Okay, fair. Are you trying to, is Harry Enton trying to say that if you're not 100% behind Trump, then you're not MAGA, so you're America first, and we rehashing that narrative that you're either MAGA, America first, or you're an establishment neocon? This was so stupid to me. I brewed up an extra coffee and made a list of questions to debate with you. My heart is broken. All right, I will text you the link. Andrew will come on for the last 10 minutes and we'll have a talk. I'm giving this exclusively to Andrew because I know him and he's a good guy, and I'm excited for where he's at right now. We had a conversation the other day and I'm excited for him. I'm texting you the link, and we will fight to the death. I'm just kidding. Me and Andrew like each other. We're friends. All right. I just texted you the link, so jump on here. Oh, we're going to fight to the death. No, Andrew has great perspectives on things. Andrew, I've known him. I met Andrew the same time that I met Chris Paul and Ash at the symposium in 2021. And we've kept in touch since. He's been on a couple of our shows. He's been on Sit Rep, I think, before. He's been on Why We Vote a couple times. And he's incredibly smart. I have a lot of respect for Andrew, and I'm curious to get his take. And that's all it is. Like, none of us have the classified intel that everybody else or that people in the administration have. So we can only speculate on these kinds of things. So my mom was born at Broward County Hospital and grew up in Deerfield Beach. Is that close to y'all? Do you mean Broward General Hospital? Because if that's the case, that's where I was born. So we were born at the same hospital as your mom. I was born. I was born at Broward General. My sister was born at Plantation General, and my mom worked at Plantation General for most of her life. They're close by. I'm going to bring you up. Andrew is here. I'm going to bring you up, but I don't know if you're. Oh, you do have your camera on. I didn't know your camera wasn't showing up, so I didn't know if you want to have your camera. I'm with you, bro. Dog memes, man. Dog memes for the win. You're muted. Dog memes. Oh, we got some sound now.
Can you hear me now? Whoops.
Yes. And you got a little
Hear me now?
feedback. Yeah, we can hear you, but you got a little feedback.
Let me see if I can fix that. I had my headset in, hoping I could fix that.
Oh, you're looking good, man. You got a beard going. You getting that soft disclosure beard oil?
No, not yet.
You need to get some. Promo code CanCon.
Yeah, I'll try it. It's on my list. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. We got you.
Okay, cool.
So what's up, man? Dog memes?
Back in, then I took it out, then I put it back in. But in general, for some reason, it seems like these web links, a lot of times they want to default to my speakers rather than my microphone as my microphone. I don't know why that started happening. I'm going to blame
So
you.
what's up? What do you want to fight me to the death over?
Okay, so I just got a few questions. Lay out for me, what is your theory of the PSYOP of Joe Kent? I never have heard it yet.
Joe Kent is the guy that comes out and discloses the Israeli aspect to this. President Trump can't do it himself. And this is, again, this is purely my theory. Trump can't come out and say that. He's got there's way too many in that camp that surround him intimately. And so Kent, is the guy that comes out and says, hey, this was the Israelis that acted unilaterally. Trump had to, we had to go in response to that. This is how you soft disclose. This is the soft disclosure.
Okay.
Shameless plug.
Follow up then. True
Okay.
or false, Bongino is trying to rally support for the midterms.
What do you mean by that?
Well, he left his role after a
Mhm.
year, which was planned, came back to his podcast, openly, very openly, is trying to drive facts, receipts, and trying to emphasize the importance of voting in the midterms. So to me, that seems like very mainstream or normie Trump administration push, right?
So a lot of the people that I talked to behind the scenes and stuff like that knew that Bongino was a one and done guy, that
Sure.
he was only going to be in this position for about a year, maybe less, maybe more, but it was never a long term. He wasn't going to ride this out the whole way. The deployment of Bongino back on the airwaves is crucial for the midterms. I don't know that that's specifically what the motivation was behind it, but
Okay.
you could make that argument for sure.
Okay, so I'm just asking true or false. If you had to go one way or the other, is he like the Trump media arm, so to speak, to push for relevance of continuing this administration?
I would say true only because he has the biggest platform right now.
Not because of what he's saying, but because of his size.
Because of the platform.
Okay. Well, I would say that's true just because of what he's saying. I mean, he's very openly pushing for continuing the Trump administration on through the midterms with a choice of the House. So here's the reason I'm bringing this up.
Well, hold
Why
on. Let
is
me just say
Okay.
real quick. I've only watched like maybe 3 Bongino shows since he got back on the airwaves.
Okay.
So
Fair
I'm not familiar with what his perspective is right now.
Yeah, and personally, I don't enjoy it as much as I used to before
Yeah,
even
it
into
used to
the
be great.
administration. But,
Yeah.
But I'm just going to point out then, okay, so I happened to listen to him the other day, last 2 days, where he just rips on Kent. What's going on there? Do you think it's just the chaos which is drawing attention to this PSYOP? Or do you think that there's a legitimate fracture between their point of view? Because Bongino's openly saying that I respect the guy, he sacrificed a lot, but he's openly lying to people and not basing this on intelligence, but basing this on whatever the new thing is on the podcast meaning realm. So I'm curious, why do you think that friction is there?
Well, because what Joe Kent is saying right now, there is potential that there could be criminal implications for this. What Joe Kent is saying, if we were in fact forced into a war by a foreign nation, there could be implications. Now, Kent, I take it with a grain of salt when Bongino's talking without having Kent on the platform. Like if Kent and him got into that debate, it's a lot more credible to me. Him saying it on his own is kind of strange. He could also be providing cover and shielding for President Trump and saying that this is not an imminent threat, because that is, on its face, if Joe Kent is absolutely correct and Donald Trump sent in and bombed a foreign country because of what Israel said to do, or what Israel did, not what they said to do, but what Israel did, there is a potential crime there. However, I also believe that when Trump says Iran was an imminent threat, the imminent threat Iran posed to the United States was exacerbated by the Israeli attack. That was the imminent threat. The imminent threat didn't exist before the Israeli attack. The imminent threat existed because of the Israeli attack.
Okay. So in your PSYOP, I'm sorry, could you break that down a little bit more? How does this Joe Kent and or Bongino banter fit into the PSYOP? Is it
Joe Kent is the one that
drawing-
is putting that narrative out there. He is the one that is seeding the narrative. He has the credibility. He's he's an authoritative source because he left the administration. He puts that out there. I've said this before, and I think I said this on SitRep on Thursday. If you take Joe Kent's resignation letter and you remove the resignation aspect to that, that is a down the middle approach to what's going on. I've read that and I said, I could read, if I didn't know that it was a resignation letter, I could read this letter and think, oh my God, Trump is totally in bed with Israel and he's a warmonger and he's a neocon. But I could also read it and say, this makes no sense. Trump is doing this, giving a 20-year track record of being staunchly anti-war and anti-confrontation, yet he's doing this anyways. He's earned he's earned my reservation in watching what the meaning behind all of this is. So I think that letter could have gone either way.
Do you think that Bongino, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but do you think that Bongino is unaware and therefore some of this friction is coming into play, or do you think these are both actors playing a part?
I think they could be both actors. Friction drives engagement, right? Nobody wants to go into that echo. Well, the echo chamber breeds an echo chamber, but when you have friction, when you have it infinitely, like if it leads, it bleeds, that kind of thing. This is the equivalent of the narrative war bleeding. You've got Kent versus Bongino, two heavy hitters in MAGA, arguing over this or attacking over this, and that's going to completely make this go viral, like on both aspects. You're gonna have.
So this is what I began with, which was, do you think it's just the chaos which is drawing attention? So I think you and I are on the same page, at least on that. Okay, why did the narrative change from swift regime change to we could end this war whenever we want?
It might not be ready to end. That is way outside of my my wheelhouse in terms of why we would prolong this. That would be a better question for Ghost, because he has tremendous insight and this is where he lives and breathes. That would probably be a better question for him. As far as why we're continuing this to go along, Trump had said that it's going to be Israel that ultimately has to decide when they're done with this, and it's going to be a mutual thing. He said, we're going to mutually decide that this is over, but if they're not ready to give it up, then we can't do another Operation Midnight Hammer where 6 months down the road you're getting us back into the same thing. Like there needs to be a line in the sand, like this is done, it's fucking over, like that kind of thing. I don't know. That's just speculation.
To me, that seems like it would only exacerbate things. Trump saying that, Israel's eventually going to have to decide when this is over. To me, that would just exacerbate the whole narrative chaos, But anyway, that's my thought. I shouldn't probably throw that in there, but
no,
okay.
You're welcome to.
I had this thought, and this is kind of a leading question, but have you thought about the strategic nature of going after Venezuela first and then Iran?
Yes, I have. First and foremost, Trump, during that press conference says we have the formula. We did the thing with with Venezuela. You shored up the oil from Venezuela. That is no longer flowing to China, Iran, and Russia. It is now being redirected through a regional ally that we've created. I don't know if we can officially coin them an ally, but Trump has said we're getting along wonderfully with Delcy Rodriguez and the administration down in Venezuela. Oil's starting to come in there. We've got things starting to turn around for Venezuela. I absolutely think that was strategic. You clear that up first, because if you go after Iran and Venezuela is still kind of a loose asset there, or not a loose cannon down there, that makes things a lot more difficult. If China and Iran still have that influence in Venezuela, because Venezuela, if we're to believe everything we're reading in Stolen Elections, also has a lot of influence from Cuba, which Cuba is next on the chopping block, we're told. So I think this is a very well planned out, orchestrated goal, or mission. But here's the thing, and this is actually another data point to Israel jumping the gun on Iran. If we're to believe that the U.S. shored everything up with Venezuela first because of the potential loose cannon Venezuela was during a conflict with Iran, wouldn't Cuba have been next instead of Iran? Think about that. Think about conquest.
I have. Yeah. That crossed me as strange. Yeah.
It would have gone Venezuela, Cuba, then we move over. Now that we've taken that out of our own region, now you move over to Iran and everybody else, but we didn't. We got blindsided by Iran. Nobody saw this coming.
Mm-hmm.
So
so the oil is obvious. I think that's an obvious one. Do you have any other insights about the strategic nature of why you think he may have gone for one versus the other than, I guess you mentioned both the hemispheric relationship to us, the closeness, as well as the oil? Are there any other insights you have?
The only thing that, again, this isn't my specialty, like geopolitics, I reserve this for Ghost. But the only thing I would say is China is the biggest loser in this war, and they're not even involved. And China's been getting oil at minimum 20% discounts over everybody else in the world. And, I've said this on Badlands Daily a couple times. Imagine if we had a 20% discount on our energy production over the rest of the world. That's not a level playing field. And because of that, China has been able to dominate economically. And a lot of that, again, just like with Venezuela, where we're like, oh, Venezuela is a third world country. Yeah, that's because we made it that way. Well, Iran's selling oil cheap to China because we made it that way, because we sanctioned Iranian oil, because we've had sanctions imposed on them for years now. So I think that could be the strategy to, as we're trying to re-onshore corporations and companies back to America, they're still resistant because it's cheaper in China. Well, you drive energy prices up in China, and now you've taken that off the chessboard, right? And there's more incentive now for these companies to come back to America because they don't have the cheap energy that they can exploit in China anymore.
Yeah, and I've also heard, just to add real quickly to that, I've also heard that having to purchase on the not moving away from the BRIC system and having to purchase with the dollar is another major benefit that we're getting as an outcome of both of these for China, even though China's not even involved directly.
Of course. Yeah, the petrodollar. I mean, there was a lot of people speculating that the petrodollar might not survive. There's a lot of people that thought it might be the yuan or whatever, but I would love to see it go to Bitcoin, man.
What is your, have you ever read, tangent here, have you ever read Hijacking Bitcoin?
No.
Okay, I highly recommend you read it, because to me it seems very clear if you read that book why Wall Street got so interested. They basically created, there's something called a lightning layer between the actual core technology, which they deliberately kneecapped early on by individuals who apparently had an intelligence background, admittedly on the forums. They kneecapped that core technology despite its intention and inserted a lightning layer here in between, which would require basically the banks and the other financial institutions to create this lightning layer. So it's an artificially slow system so that the banks and other transaction payment processors could insert this lightning layer to speed things up, when in reality, the core technology would have blown it all away. And this is why I totally disagree with people that are really bullish on Bitcoin, because I'm like, if you look at the fundamental technology, Bitcoin Cash or others that have been spin-offs, they were more true to the original intent of it. And there's like a pretty healthy track record back to some people that had some nefarious intentions. But anyway, Hijacking Bitcoin, it's a really good read. I got it on Audible book, but that's a tangent.
Check that out. But
so what do you think about the strategic nature of changing to the Department of War before we did all this Don Rowe doctrine?
I mean, it's just the name, right? I don't like the name Department of War under President Trump. I would prefer, or unless at least we have a spinoff of the Department of Defense. Like, we should have a defense.
But do you think there's a strategic reason for it? Like broadly announcing, or what do you think? How does that fit into your thought of theory of this being a psyop?
It makes it more egregious to people when they have to hear, we're going over to Iran. The Department of Defense is going over to Iran. Well, why is the Department of Defense going over to Iran? Were they an imminent threat to us? But the Department of War going over there, it sounds a little, I think it puts a sour taste in people's mouth. And I think there is a part of this that I think is designed to piss off MAGA and to piss off the America First movement. And I think that's by intention, by design rather. So yeah, I don't know other than that though.
If Trump rebuilt our military, why do we need another 200 billion now?
Spot on. Spot on. Great fucking question. Perhaps because our stockpiles are depleted from the Biden administration sending everything over to Ukraine. Maybe because a lot of that $800 billion is laundered. And, Trump has called out Raytheon and a lot of these other defense contractors and called them out as money pits, right? And so now when you're asking, we're not even a month into this war, and Hegseth is already saying we need $200 billion more dollars. Well, where the fuck is the $800 billion, right? Are you just innovating all day, every day? How is Russia able to mount a long-term war against Ukraine on $75 billion a year? China, $250 billion a year. We're the only ones that are spending that much money. It's fucking bonkers. So I'm with you on that. That is a huge question that needs to be answered.
Did you hear about Trump not refilling the oil reserves before attacking Iran? The strategic oil reserves. Did you hear about that?
I thought that I did not.
I heard it and I didn't validate it, so that's the reason I'm wondering if you can validate it or not.
I thought he did fill the reserves. Let me check that. I thought, well, first off, I thought the Venezuelan oil was going to the reserves. Hold on.
So that basically my question, if you were able to validate that, is where does that fit into this this equation? If you have any thoughts on it.
So I asked the machine. It says he has not significantly refilled the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which began as of early 2026. The SPR holds around 416 million barrels out of 714 million barrel capacity, about 58 to 60% full, with only a modest 5% increase since he took office. I mean, 5% is pretty freaking good. Not great, but good. The reserve started Trump's term at 395 million barrels, so it's now at 416. So he brought it up about 17 million barrels, Keck. A slight.
Well, it's a drop in the bucket. 5%.
It is. It is. 5% is small. Is small. Yeah. A slight uptick. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, that's all I got. It says the One Big Beautiful Bill allocates $218 million for repairs and $1.3 billion for oil purchases, but implementation has been gradual due to aging infrastructure needing over $100 million in repairs first. Contracts for 1 million barrels of oil were awarded in November 2025, yet experts noted it would take years at the current rate to fully replenish it. So it sounds like he's making repairs before he does anything to refill it.
Yeah, and I know I have a lot of apprehension against using AIs to respond, but just one example of that is let me give you a good case. I was recently in the market for looking for a new Garmin, a little, portable, roadside, whatever navigation tool. So I actually did go into an AI and I said like, hey, what's a simple, no frills, eBay used model that I could like buy? And it went and it scraped through all the comments that people had made on forums about that topic and then presented me with some pretty good options. And that's what I chose. And it worked out really good. That being said, I'm well aware of a lot of times AI is not reasoning. It's actually just scraping forums or other media articles and then regurgitating that to you. So that's where I'm like, I've got a bit of apprehension just trusting the oil reserve story but
yeah, I agree. But
it could have been a narrative thing if they thought Trump is not in a strategic spot to attack. There could have been some narrative thing there too. Just a thought, but I don't know for sure. Okay, this is perhaps my hardest hitting question, and and I don't know as much about it, but I believe it's McGregor has had a very different take on how well this Iranian war has been going. What's your take on what McGregor has been saying?
So the only thing I've seen on McGregor was the interview he did where he said we got to find an off ramp like quickly because this can get really bad if we don't. I honestly I couldn't say one way or the other. I think we need to get an off ramp just because of the 2026 midterms, and this is not going to be something that we're going to be able to be successful. Now, going into the midterms with a president who vowed no new wars and that kind of stuff. If we have this war lingering for the midterms, that's going to be a really bad look for the narrative in the media when they steal the elections. Mm-hmm. If he ends it before and it's, some great victory, that's obviously a positive going into the midterms. I think it's got to end before. I was saying this. I think I said on Why We Vote, or maybe it was on Daily, but I said like it was on SitRep actually. I don't want to do the 2020 the 250th birthday celebration July 4th on 2026. I don't want to do it with fucking I don't want troops to be overseas fighting a war while we're celebrating 250 years. So it's got to end by then, man.
I 100% agree with you. However, I do recall seeing years ago that at the time, I think it was 235 or 240 years we've been in existence, we've been at war for like 80% of it, maybe 90% of it. Yeah. And by some accounts, some people say there's never been a year when we haven't had some kind of attack or, combat going on, which, that's not something I'm proud of, like as an American, but that is something that, it's kind of a reality, right? So anyway, it might just be a blind spot to look into more, not only for yourself, but for me, because, I heard McGregor making comments about we requested to land or to dock in some non-ideal Indian ports. And that's not something that we would ever do because it's so like non-ideal for, just for any kind of like security. And then there were several other comments he made to that extent, but that was the one that's coming up right now. And I don't know what to take of it. I don't know if you followed. I know that there's quite a few doomers out there, right? But I don't know if you followed. But I almost hate to say it. I'm only aware because, as you know, I was kind of on the train of like the whole COVID shot stuff, and now there's been a total, like with Stu Peters, there's been a total push in the anti-Israel camp. So I'm only aware of that change, but he, as far as I'm aware, he's also like very much, this is not going well at all, and so I don't think McGregor has come on his show, at least I don't know where McGregor has gone. But to me, it seems like Stu he really doesn't know anything about the military at all. McGregor may, right? So that to me is an interesting blind spot that I'll admit that I also have. But anyway.
I mean, I take Colonel McGregor. I have tremendous respect for McGregor. He came in at the tail end of the first Trump administration with Chris Miller. He was a senior advisor to President Trump at the very end. So, if anybody has any insight into this, he very well could. I'm not saying he does, but he very well could. I had the conversation with him one-on-one when I was in Alabama, and I was, he gets it, he understands it, but he also understands what President Trump is going up against with the lobby that is, pushing him in these directions. I also think he tries to exaggerate a little bit in order to, push that off-ramp theory. And I agree that we need to get out of this. We need to get out of this. Like immediately got to get out of this. But at the same time, I don't think it's quite as detrimental as I think it was Napolitano that I was listening to him on. It was like a 3-minute segment. And Ghost shared that to me as well. He texted it to me. I don't agree that it's but he has more knowledge than I do. So I'm not going to try and sit here and opine on it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was just curious because, you listen to a lot more media than I do nowadays, just, for your job. Okay, last question, and I promise this one is, I think it's a little bit easier. At least it's kind of injected with my opinion. I find, and what made me think of this is your last, buying Iranian oil story. To me, it seems clear Trump is going after leadership, at least in these last 2 attacks. And with that context, I had a hunch that buying Iranian oil could make sense, that the Iranians wouldn't totally hate the American influence if their economy was basically staying afloat.
Stable, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So what do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think you have to, I think the people are ready for the clerical theocracy to come to an end. I think they're ready for that. I also think that you can't, and Trump said this a week ago when he was in Doral, you can't leave it in a vacuum, because every time we do that, what takes over? The CIA-backed regime, right? The ISIS, the Al-Qaedas of the world, the Muslim Brotherhoods of the world, they take over. So I think that I personally, and again, pure speculation, not from a very educated standpoint, I think you're either going to see Mojtaba Khamenei stay in power, or you're going to see Pezeshkian get handed over. Just the structure that they have in Iran, the Ayatollah is like the supreme leader. The president has authority, but not nearly, like he's heavily constrained by the Ayatollah. Just chop the whole clerical part of that out, and Pezeshkian is the authoritative leader. I don't think you're going to see like a Pahlavi come in. I think that, President Trump has kind of cut that off, just like he did Maria Corina Machado in Venezuela. So that would be my guess, is that, yes, you have to keep the people happy. You're going to reinstall a civilian secular government with Pezeshkian. And ultimately, I'm hoping that they open up the markets in Iran, the oil markets in Iran to Europe. Europe is very dependent on the gas fields that SARS, what was it called? Port SARS, the facility there for LNG. Well, I was reading something that said that if that facility that Israel hit the other day, if that got destroyed, like you would see Europe go without LNG like overnight, literally overnight. So again, it could be fear mongering, could be truth. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, I'm with that.
Yeah, well, all of that sounds interesting. Again, thanks for taking my questions. But unfortunately, I haven't had a lot of opportunity to stay in tune with everything you've been reporting on. So I apologize if some of that was redundant. But
you're good. Just make sure you watch Tuesday with Ghost, because he's
sure.
I defer to him on a lot of this stuff. So
right.
So.
Well, anyway, I don't know if that was even a challenge, but there you go. Those were my questions that came up.
No, that was very good. I like, because it's good to clarify things sometimes, at least my perspective, because all of this is my perspective. I don't have any insider baseball on any of this stuff. So it's always good to get some feedback on that. So I appreciate it. All right, brother. Take care, man.
Yep. Thanks for your time. See you.
All right. Later. All right. So there it is. Do jumping on. Known him for 5 years now. So it's always good to hear from him. And we're going to land it there. Got 600 people watching. Smash that thumbs up if you have not done so yet. And I will be doing a gaming stream tomorrow for premium only, because we have to, with Rumble Studio, you got to do X amount of hours. And so I'm going to get those hours in tomorrow. And if you guys want to check it out, you can. It's just to shoot the shit and usually playing League of Legends, killing time, No need to sign up or subscribe if you don't want to. But yeah, that's all I got. So I'm going to jump on out of here. Stay frosty. God bless each and every one of you. God bless America. Make the deep state motherfuckers pay for this.